Chapter 1690. On the Other Side. Qian Mansion. Although the loss of Qian Wanli had a great impact on Qian Tong, after seeing Qian Xian's terrifying achievements on the mountain and his talent in business arithmetic, Qian Tong was amazed. Qian Tong could only sigh that God was kind to him. And that was not all. Because of Qian Wanli's matter, Zhang Feng's paper mill business was still operating according to the share when Qian Wanli was still there. Now, Qian Tong was earning more. Even now, because of the business connection with White Deer College, the Qian family was almost soaring in the business world. Not to mention in Chang'an City. It could be said that because of Qian Wanli, they even had a connection with Niu Weili. Since ancient times, merchants had been the lowest profession. But once they had a relationship with the government, it was different. This was the so-called collusion between officials and merchants. But this was just a little unpleasant to hear. In this era, all merchants who wanted to do business had the shadow of a merchant behind them. Before, Qian Tong was just a small bank manager. How could he be qualified to come into contact with this? But now, it was different. All of this was because of Zhang Feng. At this time, Qian Tong's business not only included the white paper business, but also the phosphate fertilizer business around Chang'an. He even had a connection with Zheng Tufu's farm. At this time, Qian Tong felt that he had lived half his life in vain. In less than a year, he had achieved a terrifying achievement that he didn't even dare to imagine. How could he not be excited? At this time, in the Qiantong private bank, Qian Tong was checking the daily accounts when he was suddenly alarmed by a voice. On the orders of the patriarch, I invite Master Qian to the Zhang Mansion for a chat. Zhang Mansion? Qian Tong hurriedly stopped writing and looked out of the window. He saw a servant coming, but the word on the servant's clothes made Qian Tong hurriedly come out to greet him. That symbol was Zhang. That word. To be precise, in the entire Tang dynasty, who else but Zhang Feng could make his servants wear the same uniform? The servants in Zhang Feng's residence wore almost the same clothes. Almost all the men wore satin, but the color of their clothes was uniformly white. It was a world of difference from the brown clothes worn by other servants. Moreover, there was another special point about Zhang Feng's servants, that was, their clothes and trousers were almost separated. It was not like a long gown, but it was also not like a short gown. In short, the clothes of the servants in Zhang Feng's mansion were a beautiful scenery in the entire Chang'an. Once they saw the person in the robe, they would be shocked. They all knew one thing. Zhang Feng's men were here. Moreover, because of Wanli, Zhang Feng had killed people in Chang'an. At this time, when the servants of the Zhang mansion went out, almost everyone had to take a detour. They did not dare to offend him. However, Zhang Feng's servants were all very humble and did not give off the feeling of arrogance. There was even a rumor that if a servant in Zhang Feng's mansion dared to put on airs, as long as Du Zidong and Steward Du heard it, they would pack up and leave immediately without Zhang Feng's order. That was the rule. The most beautiful servants in the Zhang mansion were the maids. Each of them was wearing a skirt and a pair of light blue trousers, and a slanted opening with a row of buttons on the upper part of the clothes. Her clothes accentuated her figure vividly. Every time these maids went out, a large group of men would follow behind them. There would even be fights. There were even people from the Chang and local government waiting in Zhang Feng's mansion. Once a maid of Zhang Feng's mansion went out, they would definitely warn all the men in advance. Especially the men who had improper thoughts. Zhang Feng's mansion became the cradle of the dreams of the entire Chang'an city and the slaves of the right age in the surrounding areas. More importantly, it was. In the entire mansion, there was almost no other family in the entire Chang'an city. It could be said that they ate better than the young ladies of the rich families. Qian Tong thought about it in his mind and instantly cupped his hands and said, "Little brother, you said that Prince Zhang invited me?" The servant also nodded humbly before bowing to Qian Tong and saying, "Master Qian, my master has an urgent matter to attend to and I must inform Senior Niu, so I won't speak any more. I hope Master Qian can return to the house as soon as possible." How dare Qian Tong act rashly? He hurriedly cupped his hands and hurried to Zhang Feng's mansion. And at this moment, in Zhang Shan's mansion, he had also received the same news. After learning about the situation, Zhang Shan hurriedly flipped the sign of the dessert shop and closed the shop. Those who were waiting to buy desserts, as well as the little beggars who were waiting for Zhang Shan's desserts every day, were instantly in an uproar. This was the first time in more than 10 years that Isan dessert shop closed in such a hurry. Everyone looked at the man in white servant clothes and thought about what he had just said. They instantly understood what was going on. Zhang Feng. It was Zhang Feng. And from the meaning of his words, it seemed that something big had happened. Everyone's face couldn't help but change suddenly. Something big was going to happen. Chapter 1691. As people who knew Zhang Feng received the invitation one by one, they were all shocked. Then, they were all shocked. Then, everyone rushed to Zhang Feng's mansion, although they didn't know what Zhang Feng wanted to do. But the matter of Zhang Feng meeting the people of the Xia family in the tea house was known by everyone. They even knew the true identity of the old scholar. However, this was no longer important. What was important was what Zhang Feng wanted to do. This was the key point. After a little inquiry, everyone understood that Zhang Feng agreed to the 100,000 sets of military equipment in the army. This was the key point. In less than 2 hours, everyone hurried to Zhang Feng's mansion. But at this time, everyone looked at Zhang Feng, who was sitting in the flower garden with his butt sticking out. They were a little confused. Even Li Shimin couldn't help but want to ask, but he closed his mouth several times. "Grandpa, what is Uncle Zhang doing? Why don't he use the servants but do it himself?" Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but twitch the corners of their mouths. The person who spoke was Li Tai. This man was amazing. Not only was he deeply liked by the emperor and empress, but he was also deeply liked by the retired emperor. So, only he dared to say so at this time. Wei Zheng and others had already arrived. But, with the retired emperor and empress here, they didn't dare to say anything. They could only keep their heads down and stare at Zhang Feng. "Grandson, you have to watch carefully. This kid is a crafty person. Anything he can get must be a treasure. Just wait and see. Today will definitely be fun again." Li Yuan smiled and hugged Li Tai. He wanted to carry him up, but after a few hugs, he didn't lift him up. He was so tired that he was panting. Seeing this, Li Tai rolled his eyes and said, "Grandpa, you said it would be fun? But this uncle, why does he look like the flower thief that the maids in the house said?" Puff. Hearing this, there were already people who couldn't hold themselves back anymore. Zhang Feng also staggered. He stared at Li Tai and said, "Little guy, who taught you this?" "Tai, don't talk nonsense." Zhang Sun Wugo's expression also changed slightly as he scolded. Li Shimin and the others didn't care. Instead, they looked at Zhang Feng with a smile. This brat had called them over. Now, they had been here for almost half an hour, and this brat was actually playing with flowers in the flower bed. No matter who it was, they would not be able to stand it. Furthermore, this prodigal was stepping on precious flowers and plants. Moreover, this was originally a gift from Li Shimin to Li Yuan. How could anything planted in this flower bed be ordinary? However, to Zhang Feng, they were like weeds. At this time, Li Shimin and the others felt that Zhang Feng was not stepping on his own things, but on their faces. It hurts. His heart ached. This prodigal, even Zhang Shan and Qian Tong couldn't help but have a toothache when they saw the flowers and plants under Zhang Feng's feet. Seeing Zhang Feng leave the flower bed, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Zhang Feng was also excited. Seeing that Li Tai seemed to be declaring his sovereignty, Zhang Feng glared at him and said, "Little brat, you don't learn good things. If this was my academy, do you believe that I wouldn't let Tai Miao and the others beat you? They wouldn't dare." Li Tai also pouted and put his hands on his hips. "Enough, you're already so old, why are you acting like a child?" Li Shimin felt a headache coming on and hurriedly covered Li Tai's mouth, pointing to the pile of white stacks behind Zhang Feng. If you want white stacks, I'll find someone to get them for you. In less than an hour, your courtyard will be filled to the brim. More importantly, what are you doing with these things? Also, brat, you should know that any of these flowers under your feet can be bought for at least 1,000 stacks of white stacks. You really are a prodigal son. Zhang Feng was stunned. He couldn't help but turn around to look at the flower bed he had ruined, then at the pained expressions on everyone's faces. Speechless, he asked, "What you said is true?" Li Shimin shrugged and said, "Of course, this is not worth mentioning to you. Brat, your money can be said to be the richest outside of the imperial treasury." Zhang Feng did not refute, washing his hands and sitting next to Li Shimin, looking at the mountain of white stacks in front of him and said, "Today, I invited everyone here for this." "We know." Li Shimin coughed and said, "Today, did you go to see the people of the Xie family? And you even wrote a poem on the street and bought dried flowers?" Zhang Feng was a little surprised. Zhang Sun Wugo said with a smile, "Second brother is right. Almost the whole of Chang'an knows about this. They said that for the two madams, you were generous and bought dried flowers. We didn't believe it before, but now." Zhang Sun Wugo smiled and did not say anything. How could Zhang Feng not know what she wanted to say? Zhang Feng also pretended not to hear, coughed and said, "These flowers are important to solve the problem of 100,000 sets of winter clothes." Chapter 1692. In an instant. Everyone's face couldn't help but change. Although they all knew that Zhang Feng was fiddling with this thing at this time should be related to this matter, they really couldn't figure out how this thing was directly related to the 100,000 winter clothes. More importantly, at this time, it seemed that they had no other way. Li Shimin slowly put away the smile on his face and said seriously, "Fengzi, this matter is of great importance. Lord Zhangsun may have passed on what you promised to His Majesty at this time. At this time, it's a done deal." You don't believe me?" Zhang Feng narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Shimin. He patted him on the shoulder and said, "Lao Li, you still can't do it." In an instant, Wei Zheng and Empress Jiangxuan's faces suddenly changed. Daring to say that His Majesty couldn't do it, and in front of His Majesty, really, only Zhang Feng alone. Who dared to say this? Ahem. Ahem. Little Gizi and Du Zidong stood aside and coughed anxiously. Wei Zheng also hurriedly winked at Zhang Feng. Seeing this, Zhang Feng was stunned. Looking at everyone's face one by one, Zhang Feng asked, "Lao Li, okay, boy, let's not talk about this first. Tell me, how are you going to play? Or, how are you going to turn these flowers into clothes?" As far as Old Man knows, the Crown Prince is guarding the border at this time. If this causes unrest at the border because of this, do you know what kind of crime you will bear? Li Yuan was no longer in the mood to play. After all, he also knew that this matter was of great importance, and he had to face it seriously. Moreover, this matter is of great importance. Once the temperature in the north plummets, Tuli Khan will go south, and this matter will be serious. Moreover, it's only a day's journey from Feng province to Chang'an, so, don't joke about this. That's right, Fengzi. Because of this, your brother Li can't sleep at night. He's worried about this. You see, now that Qian has gone to Qiuzi, what if something happens? Madam, don't worry. I didn't say there was no way. Zhang Feng was also anxious. Seeing Zhang Sun Wugo's distressed appearance, he couldn't help but feel numb. Zhang Sun Wugo's appearance was already peerless, and now that she was crying, Zhang Feng couldn't bear it anymore. Madam Li, sister-in-law, don't worry, I have my ways." How was Zhang Sun Wugo crying? It was just a method. She knew that this kid was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. But at this time, when he called her sister-in-law, she couldn't help but look at Zhang Feng with some interest. "You called me sister-in-law?" Zhang Feng was a little confused, but he still said, "Well, let's talk about serious matters. This thing is actually called cotton. I didn't know about it before, but I saw this thing in a book called Record of the World by my respected teacher. It said that this thing is unique to the Longyu Dao. But now, the Western Turks also have it, but that's not the main point. The main point is that this thing, after some simple processing, can be made into clothes. No matter how cold the winter weather is, it can make people feel as warm as spring. Moreover, you can see that this thing is very soft and elastic. Zhang Feng fiercely boasted about the cotton. For a moment, everyone was a little confused. However, what Zhang Feng said was true. This white cotton, which Zhang Feng called cotton, was really very soft. It was even softer than the ferret's fur. Coupled with the fact that Zhang Feng was excitedly introducing this thing, everyone subconsciously became excited as well. Fengzi, this thing is so miraculous, and it can be made into a mess. It's as comfortable as being stuck in wool. If this is really so miraculous, why didn't it exist before? Really, Fengzi, if you really have a way, why did you refuse to do it at the start? Faced with this series of questions, Zhang Feng felt a headache coming on. Is it because I didn't notice this thing before? At that time, if I had known that such a good treasure would be wasted like this, I would have taken it out long ago. However, it's not too late now. Right now, I have an important task for you guys to do, and that is, buy this thing in bulk for me. Zhang Feng's words were for Zhang Shan, Qian Tong, and Niu Weili. As for Lao Li, he knew that he was more anxious than anyone else, so Zhang Feng wasn't worried about them. On the contrary, the few people who had just been called over were a little confused at this time. And after hearing so many big things in the military that they had never heard of, their jaws had already dropped to the ground. At this time, when they heard Zhang Feng say this, they were a little confused. Especially Niu Weili, he had a good eye, especially because of his identity. Before, he had some doubts about the identity of Wei Zheng and the others. At this time, seeing so many people, and the momentum that these people occasionally exuded during their conversation, he could faintly guess that they were not simple. At this time, when he heard Zhang Feng say this, Niu Weili hurriedly said, I'll order people to buy it, but this thing, no one has ever bought it before, and there are as many of them as there are hairs on an ox at the foot of Zhongnan Mountain. When Zhang Feng heard this, he raised a finger and said, I'll buy it for 5 copper coins per caddy. As for how much you want to buy it, that's your business, I'll only pay 5 copper coins. Chapter 1693. After seeing them off. At this time, only Zhang Feng, Li Shimin, and a few others were left in the courtyard. Wei Zheng's courage gradually grew. Just as he was about to speak, he heard Li Yuan slowly say, Boy, this thing can obviously be sold at a lower price. Why did you ask for such a high price from the beginning? Zhang Feng smiled faintly. Looking at the warm sunset that was about to set, they followed Zhang Feng into the room. Zhang Feng then said, This is why I called them here. Businessmen, if there are no benefits, why would they help you? Besides, this Niu Weili is the county magistrate of Chang'an. Although he has an official Weibo, he is the local snake of Chang'an. If he participates, many things will be very easy to handle. Besides, this Qian Tong has been cooperating with us for a long time, and he can run a bank in Chang'an for so long. Naturally, he has his reasons. Most importantly, he is in this business. If I don't look for him, who will I look for? If I look for you, you just wave your hand and the whole world will know. In less than 10 days, this thing will be known by the whole world. Besides, Zhang Shan, although he is a peddler, the people he contacts are the same as Qian Tong, the people at the bottom. Although we have to do this business, we also need to take things from the people and use them for the people. Moreover, the whole cotton and cotton clothes will be a trend in the future. That's why I called the 3 of them here. Hearing this, Li Shimin and the others suddenly understood. At this time, Li Tai interrupted, Boy, you say this white dye is really so good? Can anyone wear it in the future? Zhang Feng's face instantly pulled a long face. Li Shimin glared at Li Tai, and Li Tai looked innocently at Li Yuan behind him. Li Shimin instantly had no way out. Li Yuan hurriedly smoothed things over and said, "A child's words carry no harm, a child's words carry no harm. Boy, why don't you say, could it be that this thing is even better than that fur?" Zhang Feng thought about it and didn't know what to say. He had no choice but to turn around and call for Du Zidong and the others to come up. He took out some cotton and some silk and cotton cloth from his house and started to flick the cotton on the spot according to Zhang Feng's instructions. This cotton ball made Zhang Feng stumped. After all, he didn't know how to do this. He had only seen it once in a classic anti-Japanese war drama, so he copied it and asked the servants to tidy up the living room. With this, the eyeballs of Li Yuan and the rest all popped out. He couldn't figure out what Zhang Feng was doing. However, the fluttering cotton soon turned everyone's heads white. In the end, they couldn't take it anymore and moved to Zhang Feng's study to admire his collection of calligraphy. After a full 2 hours, Zhang Feng reimbursed Jingshu for 3 sets of gauze curtains, and only then did he manage to make a piece of cotton the size of a bed. It was soft and elastic. Although it wasn't as good as ideal, Zhang Feng felt it was almost there. He hurriedly called the maids in the mansion and hurriedly sewed it according to Zhang Feng's request. Just when everyone's stomachs were rumbling with hunger, Zhang Feng walked into the study with a roughly made cotton-padded shirt and trousers. As soon as he entered the door, it instantly attracted everyone's attention. Zhang Feng's cotton-padded jacket was almost made according to the style of cotton-padded jacket and trousers of later generations. Therefore, the style was indeed a bit unimaginable for everyone at this time, but they didn't care. After all, this thing was nothing to Zhang Feng, but for everyone, it was simply a miracle. It wasn't excessive at all. Just now, everyone was still looking at a pile of cotton, but in just more than 2 hours, it became clothes. How could it not be shocking? Li Shimin solemnly took the cotton-padded jacket from Zhang Feng and held it in his hand to examine it carefully. The cotton-padded jacket looked very thick, at least 2 inches thick, but it was less than an inch at the stitches. It was soft to the touch, softer than wool and mink fur. It wasn't heavy in his hand. It was as light as a feather. Li Shimin was a little shocked. But he still put it on without batting an eyelid. In an instant, that soft and warm feeling filled his whole body. At this time, Li Shimin couldn't help but ask, "Fengzi, how did you do it? Why am I really so warm? And no one has ever found such a magical thing before?" Li Shimin was very excited. But he was also very upset. This white fold could be said to be a kind of useless flower that everyone in Chang'an loved and hated. They loved it because there were still flowers in the imperial garden from autumn to winter, but hated it because every year when this flower fell, when the wind blew, it was more frightening than the white poplar flowers. The whole house was full of this thing. But who knew that it would have such a magical effect? How else could Li Shimin not be excited? 100,000 winter clothes in a month, in the bag. This was the most important thing. At this time, everyone was also a little shocked. After all, who was Li Shimin? He was the emperor. Even if Zhang Feng made phosphate fertilizer, he wouldn't be so excited. But at this time, the emperor didn't care about the scruples and directly said, "I." What did this mean? This meant that the pink material called cotton-padded jacket he was wearing was really effective. Chapter 1694. At this moment, everyone was staring at Li Shimin with their eyes wide open. To be precise, they were looking at the red cotton-padded jacket and trousers he was wearing. This was simply a little unimaginable. It could even be said that it was a little ridiculous. However, at this moment, no one could laugh, and no one dared to laugh. After all, the clothes Li Shimin was wearing at this moment could be said to be a unique existence in the world. Although everyone wanted to try on the clothes and see how magical it was, but, at this moment, looking at the expression on the emperor's face, everyone almost understood half of it. This thing should not be a big problem. After all, it was made by Zhang Feng. Could Zhang Feng's products be bad? No. Fengzi, do you think this thing is really so magical? What was it? It felt as light as a cloak that was draped over his shoulders. It's just that the trousers look a little awkward. Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng speechlessly. Just now, almost everyone was wearing a robe at this time, only wearing a pair of trousers inside. However, at this time, Li Shimin was in a hurry to put it on. After putting it on, he realized that the robe could be said to be tied to his body. It was incomparably awkward and strange. It was fine if Li Shimin did not say it. Once he said it, everyone's expression could not help but become strange. Zhang Feng shrugged and said, "This thing is actually designed for the military. The main purpose of this thing is to keep people warm. If it's not to keep people warm, why would I make it? I dare to bet that with such a jacket, even in the bitter cold of the North Desert, in the snowstorm, there is almost no problem. Most importantly, after wearing this thing, not only does it prevent cold and warm up, but it also does not affect movement at all. Don't you realize that this thing is as good as not wearing it? And most importantly, this thing, if you wear it with a little care, there is almost no problem wearing it for 2 to 3 years." Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin's faces lit up at his words. This kid was really thinking for them. Didn't this thing come out for them? If this was placed in the military, 3 years, how much money would they save in 3 years? Putting everything else aside, if what Zhang Feng said was true, then no one in the army would ever die from the cold. Thinking of this, Yu Qigong hurriedly said, "Feng Zi, is what you said true or false? If it's true, then. Seeing this, Li Shimin hurriedly interrupted Yu Qigong and said, "I have my own decision on this matter, and this matter must be reported immediately. Old Yu, quickly report this matter to the Lord Zhangsun. As for the following matters, I will discuss it with Feng Zi." As he spoke, Li Shimin turned to look at Zhangsun Wugo and said, "Why don't you take Tai, and Lord Father for a walk in the courtyard?" How could Zhangsun Wugo not know that Li Shimin had something important to discuss with Zhang Feng? He quietly left with Li Tai. This kid had been impatient for a long time. Now that he could finally go out to play, he was extremely excited. Li Yuan naturally knew the importance of this matter and did not say anything. With his hands behind his back, he called out to Li Tai and walked outside. Although the sky had already darkened, who was Zhang Feng? At this time, the entire residence was hung with lanterns. Even the trees were full of lanterns, and the entire courtyard was as bright as day. Even Li Shimin could not bear to be so ostentatious. At this time, after everyone had left, Li Shimin reluctantly took off the cotton-padded clothes on his body. He smacked his lips and asked, "Feng Zi, do you have any other use for this thing? Or rather, what other purpose do you have for creating this thing? I don't believe that you created this thing just for the army." As he spoke, Li Shimin's eyes stared straight into Zhang Feng's eyes, wanting to see everything about Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng did not decline and shrugged, saying, "That's right, this thing is a good thing. If it is only used for the army, then it is indeed a bit of a waste. As a merchant, Lao Li, could it be that you have not thought of other ways? For example, like fine salt or other Eastern things, to sell to the common people?" Li Shimin was shocked. He quickly calculated in his mind and said, "You brat, could it be that you want to use these things?" Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously and patted Li Shimin's shoulder. "Brother, let me tell you this. You have seen this thing. Although I am only giving them a profit of 5 copper coins, you have to know that once my next step is to build the textile factory, it will be mass-produced. At that time, if I put these two together, Lao Li, think about it, this will be a considerable income." Li Shimin actually knew about the textile factory, but at this time, when it came from Zhang Feng's mouth, Li Shimin still felt a little shocked. After all, a textile factory that could produce a few hundred bolts of cloth a day without many people was an existence that had never been heard of before. At this time, if this thing was put together and produced together, then Li Shimin suddenly felt that it was really possible to solve the military supplies problem in a month's time. Moreover, what Zhang Feng said was not unreasonable. In this way, not only would the problem of the common people be solved, those great scholars and the pedantic officials in the court would also have mysterious things to say. But at this time, Zhang Feng said again, "In fact, this business is nothing more than production around people. Eating, drinking, defecating, and sleeping is a necessity for people. Now, we have solved the problem of clothing and eating and drinking, but now there is only one gap, Lao Li. When Li Shimin heard this, he could not help but mutter, "Don't tell me you want to open a brothel?" Zhang Feng's expression froze. He hurriedly said, "No, no, no, what are you thinking all day long? What I mean is, these cotton-padded clothes and trousers are one thing. The real use of the cotton is to make quilts, cotton-padded clothes, cotton-padded trousers, and quilts. This is the next big thing I want to do. Once this thing is completed, it will be difficult for us not to become rich. Cotton-padded clothes, trousers, and quilts are the three most important things in life." Chapter 1695. Li Shimin didn't know what the three major items were. He didn't know anything else either. There was only one thing in his mind at this moment, and that was the quilt that Zhang Feng mentioned. He had never heard of this thing before. It was used for sleeping. Now, the only thing he could think of was the bedding on the bed. At this moment, when he thought of what Zhang Feng said, he instantly understood Zhang Feng's intention. The reason why the bedding was called a bedding was because this thing was almost made of mulberry hemp and animal fur. Although it was soft, after a long time, it would become furry. Before this, he didn't feel much, but now, after feeling the softness in his hand and the low price, Li Shimin was tempted. It would be a lie if he didn't feel tempted. This thing. If Zhang Feng really made it, then, Fengzi, is what you said true? Li Shimin was a little uncertain at this moment. He asked cautiously. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. "Do you think I'm a liar?" "No, no, no. I just find it a little unbelievable. Think about it, this thing can not only be made into a quilt, but it can also be made into a 4-piece bed set with our textile factory in the future. Then, it can be made into a sleeping bag for travelers, that is, sleeping bags for people who go out often. Lao Li, we're going to be rich. And I can guarantee that when this thing makes money, it can make money from fine salt and forging factories." "Wait." Li Shimin quickly stopped Zhang Feng, who was about to blindly talk, and asked, "What is the sleeping bag you mentioned?" When Zhang Feng heard this, he immediately reacted. He thought for a moment and said, "Lao Li, aren't we now raising military equipment for the army? Let me ask you, if we can produce a thing that can make soldiers sleep directly in the snow, how much do you think we can make? How much can Lord Zhangsun give us?" Seeing that Li Shimin was about to ask again, Zhang Feng hurriedly stopped Li Shimin and said, "This sleeping bag is made from a quilt made into something like a gunny sack. A thin layer of rubber is applied on the inner and outer lining of this gunny sack to create a waterproof layer and an insulating layer. This way, when you sleep, you only need to crawl into the bag. No matter how heavy the rain and snow outside, it will still be as warm as spring. Think about this thing, is it good?" Li Shimin was a little speechless. "Let's not talk about whether this thing is good or not, you have to make it first. Otherwise, what can I use to fool the court? No, I mean, show it to those old things in the imperial court. Fengzi, let's talk about something more practical. How much do you intend to buy a set?" After pondering for a moment, he asked the questions. This was the biggest problem. Now, his identity was a businessman. At this time, they had not talked about money after chatting for so long. This was a little unreasonable. What if this kid remembered later, wouldn't he be exposed? Zhang Feng pondered for a moment and said, "I'm a businessman, business is business. The cost of this set is temporarily set at 50 coins. Hiss. 50 coins? Although Li Shimin was also thinking about the price in his heart, he was also shocked by the final price that was mentioned. In his opinion, this thing, no matter what, would be at least 100 coins. But he did not expect that Zhang Feng would directly give him a 50-50 price. And most importantly, Zhang Feng's price was really too low. Seeing this, Zhang Feng smiled and said, "Do you think I'm deliberately trying to please you? Otherwise, why would such a good cotton coat only be sold at the price of a paper coat?" Li Shimin nodded subconsciously. Only then did Zhang Feng say, "To set a price, you have to sell it. And now, this thing is not only connected to the military, but also to the common people. Do you think there are many people who can take out 50 copper coins to buy clothes now? Li Shimin frowned in surprise. According to the previous situation, almost everyone will buy. That's right. You said that almost everyone will buy it. But if we directly raise the price to 100 coins, think about it, how many people will be able to afford it? This does not include the profit margin of the second-hand dealers. Let's put it this way, although we only have a profit of 50 coins, if the people buy it, on average, it will reach about 60 coins. What I said is what I know. Whether there are other profit chains in this, I don't know. So, Lao Li, what do you think of this price? Also, we can't afford to lose the border. Let's set the price as doing something for the military. After all, if the border is lost, the first to suffer will be us merchants. Li Shimin was a little enlightened. But at this time, he also understood why this guy was not so stingy when they were talking about the production of armaments. This was all because this guy thought further than anyone else. After all, Zhang Feng was right. Once Chocho was lost, once the Turks came in, the first to suffer would be the merchants. There was no escape. Chapter 1696. Zhang Feng's plan was good. It could be said that she had thought of it since the first time she told Zhang Feng about making weapons. But why didn't this kid say anything? Thinking of this, Li Shimin couldn't help but smile bitterly. You had this plan from the beginning, didn't you? Zhang Feng shrugged and threw a cigarette to Li Shimin. I didn't, but, as he spoke, Zhang Feng lit the cigarette from the oil lamp on the table. He took a deep breath and said, my idea at that time was very simple. That was to take over the trade city of Chiotzi. Once we took over the trade city of Chiotzi, we would have an escape route in the future. Li Shimin asked in surprise, what escape route? Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin for a long time and said doubtfully, Lao Li, sometimes I feel that your talent in business is extremely terrifying. If you learn from me for a month or so, it won't be a problem for you to become the richest person in the world in the future. But you are a busy man. Li Shimin's expression stiffened. Under the cover of the night, he smiled and brushed it off. Zhang Feng didn't take it seriously and said to himself, actually, merchants are ultimately not presentable. Most of the time, they are even the target of disdain by the officials and the literati. In their eyes, we merchants are just a group of people who buy low and sell high. We are just a group of people who only care about profit. Li Shimin didn't object to Zhang Feng's words. He said, you are right. Isn't that how merchants are? You think so too? Zhang Feng was a little surprised. Li Shimin knew that he had misspoken and hurriedly waved his hand. No. What I mean is, this is how it is in the eyes of many people. Scholars, farmers, businessmen, why is the merchant last? Why do we have to kneel when we see the officials? This is all. Zhang Feng was a little unhappy. To be honest, Zhang Feng was also a merchant at this time. He was just carrying the name of the academy on his back. However, Zhang Feng was different from a merchant at this time. Zhang Feng pointed at himself and Li Shimin and said, look at us. The kind you're talking about is just the kind of people who set up stalls on the street. That kind of people can't be called businessmen. More or less, they are just ants. They just sell the fruits of their labor to people who need it. And the businessmen I'm talking about are people like us. You can look at the whole Tang dynasty and before that. Have you ever seen a business model like ours? This, Li Shimin's expression instantly froze. Zhang Feng was right. Before and at this time, almost all the businessmen in the Tang dynasty were family members. Even if they hired workers, they were almost all there to do odd jobs. At this time, Li Shimin recalled the operation of Zhang Feng, Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, and the others at this time. He couldn't help but be stunned. They were not real businessmen. If they were real businessmen, then, this would be terrible. This was the business that Li Shimin created according to his own conjecture. After thinking about it casually, he instantly understood the meaning of Zhang Feng's words. Li Shimin couldn't help but be surprised and said, "Do you mean that you want to start with the people of the 5 families and 7 clans?" Dealing with these big families had always been Li Shimin's worry. These clans had the hegemony of the Tang dynasty's market. Even Li Shimin didn't dare to provoke them easily, such as the iron mine before. At this time, the new weapons were made, and Zhang Feng had a new toy. At this time, it was time to deal with these big families. However, Zhang Feng waved his hand speechlessly and said, "No, there's no rush. It's still too early to deal with them. You have to remember what happened with the iron mine. So, before we have a complete plan, we can't move." "Then why are you talking for so long?" Li Shimin stared at Zhang Feng speechlessly and asked. Zhang Feng grinned and said, "Don't worry. I know that it's not good for you to be under the control of the 7 families and 7 clans. They control the businessmen of the Tang dynasty. Almost all the idle businessmen can hardly survive. However, these people occupy all the places of the Tang dynasty. And the most important thing is that we have a common enemy, those big clans and powerful families. This is an opportunity. My plan is to dump all the benefits in our hands. While maximizing the benefits, we can also lead more people to fight against the 5 families and 7 clans. Even the emperor will be afraid of us by then." Hiss. Cough, cough, cough. Li Shimin was shocked. He took a deep breath. The cigarette in his mouth lit up instantly and burned a large part. In an instant, Li Shimin coughed violently. He said, "You are really crazy. Let's not talk about whether the people of the 5 families and 7 clans will know about it. Even if they don't know, you should know that many things we have now are inseparable interests with someone in the palace. Even many ministers in the imperial court have interests with us. Won't this share of interests offend all those people in the imperial court in an instant? At that time, not to mention other things, the people in the imperial court will bite us in the blink of an eye. Think twice, you must think twice before you act." Chapter 1697. Li Shimin was really afraid of Zhang Feng's craziness. This matter involved too many things. He didn't expect Zhang Feng's idea to be so crazy. But at this time, Zhang Feng didn't care about what Li Shimin said. He waved his hand and said, "Lao Li. This is the general trend. Think about it. Come, try this." While talking, Zhang Feng brought Li Shimin to the flower bed outside the study. While he was at it, he broke some sticks from the branches and handed one to Li Shimin, saying, "Why don't you try breaking it?" Li Shimin was a little confused. He didn't understand what Zhang Feng wanted to do, but he still followed Zhang Feng's instructions. He took a branch and broke it easily. However, Zhang Feng broke a lot of branches. In total, there were about a dozen branches. He handed them to Li Shimin. "Lao Li, try and see if you can break it." Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng. Seeing that he didn't mean to joke, he took the branch. This time, Li Shimin couldn't break it no matter what. This time, Li Shimin was even more confused. "This is," Zhang Feng smiled but didn't say anything. He signaled Li Shimin to return to the study again. Then he said, "Lao Li, the stick from before was us, or it could be said that it was our group. But we are facing the 5 surnames and 7 clans, as well as the Guanlong group. Do you think we can break them? But, don't we have a new weapon?" Li Shimin said somewhat unconvinced. After all, he was very clear about the terror of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, as well as the Guanlong group. They were able to establish the Tang dynasty and destroy the Sui dynasty. It was inseparable from the Guanlong group. At this time, if they took them by surprise and directly mobilized troops, although it would cause the economy of the Tang dynasty to decline a little, as long as they controlled these 2 clans, they could recover in a short time. Most importantly, he was the emperor. If he couldn't control everything in the world, then, what was the use? Zhang Feng also saw Li Shimin's anxiety. He couldn't help but feel that Li Shimin was able to develop his industry in the gap between the Guanlong group and the 5 surnames and 7 clans. At this time, it was not surprising that he had such an ugly expression and strong killing intent. Seeing Li Shimon's gloomy face, Zhang Feng patted Li Shimon's shoulder and said, "Lao Li, don't worry. You want to hear me out. It's not that we don't want to deal with the 5 surnames and 7 clans and the Guanlong group, but it's not the right time yet. You saw that wooden stick too. That thing is equivalent to what I said just now. Joining forces with those weak families and merchants, it seems that our profits have shrunk, but do you know what we can do with just a few of us? You should know that there are still countless businessmen under our control who can still find profitable business, such as second-hand dealers. Then we should just open our arms. Although it seems that we are earning less now, think about it. The streets of Chang and city are full of businessmen. These people, if they all buy goods from us and then pull them to other places, such as other villages and towns, then, you should know that this is the maximization of profits. At that time, no matter what those people in the court do, they will make more than twice as much as they do now in less than a month. Aren't you worried about the court? Don't worry, nothing will happen. Also, even if the Guanlong group and the 5 surnames and 7 clans make a move at this time, it will be too late. As long as our actions are fast enough, we can settle this matter before they find out the clues. By then, even if they want to stop us, it will be too late. After all, they won't be able to stop the public from gossiping. There's also Chiuzi City. At present, although water transportation has been developed, it still needs to be rerouted in Luo State. It's not used by ordinary merchants, so the land route has become their main transportation hub. And Chiuzi City is a place they have to pass through. When the time comes, even if the 5 surnames and 7 clans, Guanlong group, and even the emperor are dissatisfied with us, we will have our own place to push them. Half of the Tang dynasty's industries are connected to each other, and it will be our natural barrier. This is my current business model, and it is also the safest and most reliable business model. What do you think? Zhang Feng told him everything he knew and wanted to say in one breath. For a moment, Li Shimon's mouth was wide open, and he looked at Zhang Feng in shock, not knowing what to say. Zhang Feng was right. This was based on the fact that he was the real Lao Li. However, Li Shimon thought more about his relationship with Zhang Feng. This kid wanted to pave the way for them. In the past, which businessmen who worked closely with the court had a good ending? Zhang Feng was not afraid. At this time, he was a viscount, a great scholar, and the chancellor of Chang and University and White Deer College. Even if he were to be in the court in the future, it would not be a big deal. But what about the others? For a moment, Li Shimon was silent. He could not help but feel guilty. However, he still asked curiously, "Fengzi, you said, this is a new business model?" "Yes. Distribution business." Chapter 1698. In the past few days, Zhang Feng had spent most of his time in the villa. Jing Shu and Yu Yao had also gone to Zhang Feng's mansion. In the past few days, Zhang Feng's mansion had not been idle at all. The most eye-catching thing was the mountain of white cotton. No matter how much they tried to persuade Zhang Feng, he would not listen. Instead, he called it cotton. There were also all kinds of fabrics bought from Chang'an. There was also a large group of craftsmen coming in and out. The huge mansion, which was usually very quiet, had suddenly become as lively as the new year. In the backyard of Zhang Feng's mansion, all the women in the mansion, including those from Tonghui Lane, had been recruited. The entire backyard was now a vast expanse of white. If one looked down from above, they would think that it was snowing. The main job of these women was to use a gigantic bow-like object to flick away the cotton that was piled up like a mountain. Then, they would press it down and sew a layer of gauze with large holes on it. Then, they would cover it with another layer. And so on. Until the thickness of the gauze reached the standard of 2 inches. Although Zhang Feng's mansion was very big, it still felt a little cramped when more than 300 people were working at the same time. Among the 4 courtyards in the east, west, south, and north, except for the east courtyard, which had always been closed to the public, the other 3 courtyards, including the front yard, the backyard, and the courtyard, were all piled up with a mountain of cotton. In the hundreds of empty rooms, the finished cotton was almost bursting out of the windows. At this time, the servants and guards in the mansion were dumbfounded when they saw the people coming in and out, and then looked at the snow-white things on top of their heads. No one knew what Zhang Feng was going to do. But the only thing was that the money in the mansion had been emptied of 10 big wooden chests. It should be known that one chest was worth 1,000 strings of cash. Master bought so many white cotton. What is he going to do? How much money is left in the mansion for him to squander like this? Sigh. Who knows? For the past 2 days, everyone outside has been crazily spreading the news that our master has lost his mind. I think, that's right. Even if you give it to someone for free, no one will want it. How did it become a treasure in front of master? Who knows? Don't say any more. Housekeeper Du is here. Along with a burst of whispers, a voice rang out. Everyone hurriedly shut their mouths. Not far away, Du Zidong walked over with her hands behind her back and a head full of cotton. Seeing that they had nothing to do, Du Zidong couldn't help but scold them. However, right at this moment, suddenly, he realized that Ching Chumo had come in a hurry with some people. As soon as he entered the house, he carried the cotton wicks that had been made in the house and walked out of the door. How could this be? Child Chen, what are you? Master said that these things were made for the military. If you take them, then, before he could finish, Ching Chumo pushed him aside and said, all right. These are the things that the 4 great Confucians want. Feng Zi knows about it. I'll tell him personally later. As Ching Chumo spoke, he turned around and urged the people behind him, aren't you moving faster? When the people behind him heard this, they didn't dare to be careless. They hurriedly lowered their heads and carried the things away. In fact, the people that Ching Chumo brought were Ma Zhou and the others. The purpose of their visit was actually not that Chu Suiliang and the others had asked them to come. It was because they were itching to know that Zhang Feng was hiding here and tinkering with so many good things. Therefore, they took advantage of the time when Zhang Feng went to the small pub to sneak into Zhang Feng's mansion. Otherwise, even if they were given 10 guts, they wouldn't dare to come and rob openly. It should be known that the guards and servants in Zhang Feng's mansion were all top experts. In addition, although there were many people in the mansion at this time, they were all close to Zhang Feng. Therefore, they had to take it easy. The most important thing was, they were following orders. They didn't want to do this. However, the retired emperor was burning the fire. Who dared not to come? A few nights ago, after Li Yuan saw Zhang Feng's cotton-padded clothes, he simply forgot to eat and sleep. However, he also knew that Zhang Feng was too busy these days. Therefore, he thought of such a clever idea. He thought that he would hide comfortably on Shao Mountain and drink with the 4 great Confucians. Instead, he let Ching Chumo and the others be the thieves. However, Ching Chumo and the others were also afraid of Zhang Feng, this abnormal person. The most important thing was that Zhang Feng had the magical weapon that they longed for. They didn't dare to offend Zhang Feng at this time. They could only look for an opportunity to do this. After everyone hugged slowly, Ching Chumo also pretended as if nothing had happened. Under the eyes of Du Zidong and the others who were staring at him with blood-red eyes, he calmly walked away. As he walked, Ching Chumo also said, well, old Du, didn't Feng Zi just go out? I know where he went. I'll go find him now. You do your thing. After all, this thing is very important. I don't dare to delay it. However, at this time, Ching Chumo heard a voice that he didn't want to hear the most. Who's looking for me? Chapter 1699. Actually, Zhang Feng was very busy. And in these 3 days, Zhang Feng was extremely busy. First, he had to settle the cotton flapping equipment, then he had to settle the cotton gelling, as well as the cotton shaping and so on. He had to teach these people step by step. He was busy for 3 days. At this time, Zhang Feng was discussing with Niu Pai Huang on how to pour rubber on cloth. When Niu Pai Huang was about to join in this bustling and mysterious matter, he realized that Ching Chumo and the rest were actually stealing things. This time, The entire courtyard was extremely quiet. Everyone looked at Zhang Feng, then looked at Qing Chimo, Ma Zhou, and the rest. Their expressions were strange. At this time, Qing Chimo also slowly realized that everyone was strange, as well as Zhang Feng's malicious expression. His expression couldn't help but change. What a coincidence, Fengzi. Zhang Feng also didn't expect that Chen Tiniu and the rest would steal into his house. But the moment he saw him, Zhang Feng understood many things. The first thing he thought of was the old master, as well as the few people who were present that night. If not for these few masters, how would he, Du Dabing, dare to let Qing Tiniu be so crazy? What's more, he even dragged Ma Zhou and the rest along. This was simply comparable to a rebellion. I say, do you have to go to this extent? Zhang Feng was a little speechless. He wanted to beat them up, but he couldn't. If he didn't beat them up, if they all learned like this, what would happen in the future? Thus, Zhang Feng couldn't be bothered to beat them up. He waved his hand and said, "The few of you, that's enough. Just now, the old master told me. Otherwise, the guards in the courtyard would have already broken your legs. Let's go, Tiniu, the few of you enter the house. Ma Zhou, after getting the things away, the few of you quickly come back. I have something important for you to do." Qing Chimo, Du Shu, and Zhang Sun Chong looked at each other in confusion. They really didn't expect Zhang Feng to cover for them, but this also meant that Zhang Feng and the others had something big to announce. After all, this was the first time Niu Pai Huang had come to the mansion with Zhang Feng. Without saying a word, they followed Zhang Feng into the study. As soon as they entered the room, Zhang Feng asked them to quiet down. Only Niu Pai Huang was in the middle of the study, fiddling with a big iron pot. Inside the pot was a pot of rubber that had already solidified. Everyone was dumbfounded. He didn't know why Zhang Feng let Niu Pai Huang boil rubber here, but how could it be an ordinary thing if Zhang Feng valued it so much? Zhang Feng patted Qing Chimo's shoulder and said, "Tiniu, it was the old master who asked you to come, right?" Hearing that, Qing Chimo shrunk his neck and said, "How did you know? If I didn't even know this, I wouldn't be called Zhang Feng." Zhang Feng was a little speechless and spread his hands. Then he continued, "Tell me, what's going on?" Qing Chimo saw that there was nowhere to hide, so he had to brace himself and make up a story. He forcibly turned Li Yuan's curiosity into the people of the Tang dynasty and so on. Of course, Du Go, Zhang Sun, and the others couldn't be left out of this. In the continuous smooth lies of these people, Zhang Feng was fooled into a daze. However, he didn't have a trace of doubt. Instead, he was a little excited and reached out his hand and said, "Since the old master said it so arrogantly, then according to his character, he must have prepared the money for me, right? Come, quickly take it out. I'm also worried about where to get the money now." This time, it was Qing Chimo and the others' turn to be dumbfounded. Qing Chimo glanced at them and saw that they were very confused. He hurriedly asked, "What money?" Zhang Feng was also dumbfounded. "Isn't it the money for the order of 100,000 cotton-padded clothes from the military? Why, the old master didn't tell you about this?" Qing Chimo finally understood what was going on. He hurriedly shook his head and said, No one really mentioned this, but..." Zhang Feng frowned a little disappointedly at first, but after Niu Pai Huang's shout, Zhang Feng also let go of this matter. He grabbed Qing Chimo's hand and pointed at Niu Pai Huang, saying, "Tai Niu, now I have a difficult task for you. As for other things, you can put it aside first. It's here. It's really here. I knew it, this guy, King won't let himself be taken advantage of." Qing Chimo wanted to cry but had no tears. However, he still forced himself to ask stutteringly, "Well, tell us, as long as it's something we can do, as long as it's something the four great scholars ask us to do, we'll definitely do it." "Hey! Look at how scared you are. Actually, this is nothing else, it's something you've done before." Zhang Feng was stunned for a moment, then he grinned. However, when everyone saw Zhang Feng's grin, they instantly felt bad. Zhang Feng didn't care about this and said, "I don't mean anything else. You've seen it too, since this phosphate fertilizer factory was built. It seems like you've been idle. Next, I want you to work with Niu Huang, in half a month. Wait. Zhang Sun rushed over and looked at Niu Huang, who was boiling rubber, with horror, saying, Feng, you want us to boil rubber? Chapter 1700. Making rubber. This looked like a place on the mountain. It was even more horrible than squatting in the reflection room after making a mistake. The reflection room. As the name implied, it was used to reflect on one's mistakes. However, calling this house a house was a waste of talent. The entire house could only accommodate a small bed that was half the size of a door and a night fragrance bucket. It was only 4 feet high. Just think about it, how terrifying would it be for a person to squat in a dark room that was only 4 feet high? However, even so, everyone on the mountain thought that it was a blessing. The rubber factory on the mountain was built in the most remote part of the mountain. Usually, very few people would go there. However, most of the students were 17 or 18 years old. They liked to explore these things. However, everyone who had been to the rubber factory was forced to step back by the pungent smell of rubber and the pitch-black, stinky gutters that stretched for over a mile. The most important thing was, even the birds in the sky didn't dare to provoke the poison of this thing. The fish in the water had long died, not to mention the ones in the sky and the ones in the ground. They had all run away and died. Who would dare to go to such a terrifying place? However, at this time, Zhang Feng wanted them to go. What was this? This was a reward. They knew that Zhang Feng wouldn't let them go so easily. It turned out that this was the trap. Qing Chumo's face was like a pig's liver. He hurriedly said, Fengzi, this matter was instigated by the old man. You know that we are the younger generation. We have to listen to whatever the old man says. We know that stealing is wrong, but you don't have to trick your brothers like this, right? What are you talking about? Zhang Feng was a little confused. However, looking at the expressions on their faces, he suddenly understood. Just this? You're scared? Zhang Feng shook his head. Qing Chumo didn't know what Zhang Feng was thinking. He hurriedly said, Isn't it? We saw it with our own eyes. The place where the rubber factory was located was pitch black all day long. Even the fish in the canal were all dead. The water was pitch black. There were no birds in the sky, and no wild animals in the ground. We all heard that it was the poison of the rubber that had blocked the canal. Poison? Wasn't it caused by air and water pollution? How did it become like this? Zhang Feng was anxious at the current level of everyone's intelligence and understanding of these things. He waved his hand and said, It's not about this. I mean, the textile factory should start. At present, we have enough cotton in Guanyi, Shannon, and Longyu Road. However, the fabric is not enough. If we want to make 100,000 cotton-padded clothes in a month's time, we have to think of a new way. If we start the textile factory, we can. You're talking about this. That's not a problem. You should have said it earlier. See, we're scared. Before Zhang Feng finished speaking, Qing Chumo and the others came to their senses and then returned to their usual sloppy appearance. They sat in Zhang Feng's study in a disorderly manner. It seemed that Feng Zi would not allow them to do that horrible black smelly thing. That would be great. If they didn't go to that place, they would be safe. Zhang Feng didn't know what to do with this move of the few of them. After being stunned for a moment, he came to his senses. It seemed that they were afraid that he would punish them to go to the black kiln. After thinking all this, Zhang Feng suddenly had an impulse to curse. Can you think of something else in your heads? Is there anyone who shows off like you? Qing Chumo crossed his legs, wiped the sunglasses in his hand, and asked, What is showing off? Zhang Feng hurriedly surrendered. Now is not the time to talk about this. You're thinking too much. Although I've stopped today's matter for you, if you don't want me to pursue it, you have to do as I say. Now, Laoli has personally built a textile factory outside the city. I'm going to look for you when I come back. I've discussed with Laoli. We only need 30 water wheels as the linkage drive, and our textile factory can run, so it's the water wheels. Ching Chimo thought it was a big deal. But at this time, after hearing that Zhang Feng had discussed with Li Shimin, and the most important thing was that the emperor should still be outside the city at this time, it was a big deal. The emperor was personally presiding over the overall situation and handling the textile factory. At this time, if something went wrong, then, Feng Zi, isn't it just water wheels? You should have said it earlier. I don't want to scold you, Feng Zi. Why didn't you say it earlier? Say it earlier. Zhang Feng felt that he was going to vomit blood and die. Looking at the change in attitude of the few people, he pointed to the door, took a deep breath and said, "Get out. If you can't make 30 water wheels in 10 days, you'll F***king stay in the rubber factory for a month." F***ck. Ching Chimo and the others couldn't help but wail. Then, they rushed out of Zhang Feng's house, howling like wolves and ghosts. Zhang Feng looked at the few people who came and went in a hurry. He was speechless and raised his beautiful middle finger. Chapter 1701. As soon as Ching Chimo and others left, Zhang Feng hurriedly closed the door of the study. In an instant, the whole study was filled with an indescribable smell. The smell could even be smelled from 3 feet away. It was so stinky that it made people's hair stand on end. However, it didn't matter to Zhang Feng. Instead, he squatted beside Niu Pai Huang, watching Niu Pai Huang seriously boiling the rubber with relish. Niu Pai Huang was already guilty, but at this time, he couldn't think too much. After all, the matter between Zhang Feng and his brothers didn't allow him to have any improper thoughts. These were all things that he didn't want to touch. After a while, Niu Pai Huang finally finished boiling the rubber that needed to be boiled. When he turned around, he didn't know when Zhang Feng had already put on a mask. Niu Pai Huang was stunned, but still said, "Director, it's done." Hearing that, Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "Hurry up, get a basin of water." Niu Pai Huang was stunned. What was he going to do? However, according to Zhang Feng's request, he hurriedly went outside the study to find a basin of water. When he came in, he found that Zhang Feng had picked up a piece of cloth. After seeing him come in, Zhang Feng carefully put the cloth in the water. Niu Pai Huang didn't understand, but he didn't ask much. After he put the basin of water, Zhang Feng quickly picked up the cloth that had just been put in the rubber, and then hurriedly put it in the basin of water. All this happened in 3 breaths. Moreover, Oxhide Huang could clearly see that the cloth was made of top-grade cotton. Although one side had been covered with rubber, the other side was not damaged, but the original yellow edge was a little darker. Niu Pai Huang was confused. But he didn't dare to ask. After waiting for a while, Zhang Feng picked up the cloth. Only then did Niu Pai Huang realize that the rubber was perfectly attached to the cloth. Zhang Feng roasted the cloth on the fire, then threw it to Niu Pai Huang and said, "Quickly cut off all the rubber on this cloth with a knife." Oxhide Huang was dumbfounded. He looked at Zhang Feng in a daze. Zhang Feng said, "This is something that transcends time. You have to be careful. Tomorrow morning, when you scrape off all the rubber on the cloth, I will tell you what it is." Oxhide Huang was dumbfounded. Looking at Zhang Feng, who was yawning as he left, and then looking at the thick stack of cotton cloth, he couldn't help but stare. But he didn't dare to say anything. He could only sigh and hurriedly do as Zhang Feng asked. After Zhang Feng left, Ching Chimo and the others slipped back into the study. As soon as they entered, they stared at Niu Pai Huang and said, "Old Huang, what are you doing?" Niu Pai Huang shook the cloth in his hand helplessly and said, "I don't know what the dean wants to do. He just threw such a good cloth into the rubber, and then asked me to scrape off the rubber on it. This. Don't you know what you are doing?" Ching Chimo and the others looked at each other. No one knew what Zhang Feng wanted to do. They could only say, "You, do it first. Let's wait and see." Did Feng say anything? After Niu Pai Huang recounted Zhang Feng's words in full detail, Ching Chumo and the others were also dumbfounded. They could only urge Niu Pai Huang to hurry up and do it. Intuition told them that what Zhang Feng wanted to do this time was after all somewhat inconceivable. After all, Zhang Feng wasn't an ordinary person. When you felt that something was wrong with him, it was also when he was doing something. At this time, you had to pay attention. If you didn't pay attention, he would give you a huge surprise. And at this time, what was Zhang Feng doing? At this time, he was tinkering with 100,000 armaments. He could actually do something that no one could understand at this time. What was he doing? This guy was definitely doing a huge surprise. At the thought of this, Ching Chumo's eyes rolled. He signaled Yuchi Baolin, Wei Shuyu, and the others with his eyes. They were all wily old foxes. With just a glance and a movement, they could almost understand. After they left the study, Ching Chumo said with a rare seriousness, I think what Feng wants to do this time is definitely related to the 100,000 armaments. And you also know how important this matter is not only to the second master, but also to my family and Baolin's family. So, I think, should we tell the family about this matter? Is there a need to say this? If it weren't for the fact that you all didn't say anything, would have gone back long ago. Oh right, Tai Miao, have you given those things to the second master and the old master? Zhang Sun looked worriedly at Ching Chumo and asked. Ching Chumo gave Zhang Sun a reassuring look and said, Don't worry, I just asked Ma Zhou and the others to send these things to Cheng and Hotel. There are specialized people there who will send them back safely. But I got some for my father. Zhang Sun rolled his eyes and said, I knew you wouldn't be honest. Oh right, remember to get some for my family. My father is getting impatient from waiting. Me, too. Dugo looked at Ching Chumo with a smile. Seeing this, Ching Chumo couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. But he still said, Don't worry, I've sent them all. I didn't see any of you coming to help just now. Good fellow, you were all waiting for me to catch them for Feng, right? And you call yourselves brothers. Chapter 1702. Li Yuan, who was waiting on the mountain, was a little upset. Although he always wanted to come to the mountain to drink with the four great scholars, Dr. Sun, and others and reminisce about the old days, such a beautiful day was very comfortable. More importantly, it could block the mouths of those leisurely people in the imperial court. Every day, looking at a group of youthful youths, holding books in their hands, every day they were as excited as if they were injected with chicken blood. There was no need to mention how nourishing it was. But today, Li Yuan had been absent-minded instead. Although he had been cooking wine with a few people while bragging, his eyes had been staring outside the door from time to time. Who were you, Shernan and the others? How could they not see Li Yuan's thoughts? He asked with a smile, Old master, are you still waiting for that kid? Who didn't know about Zhang Feng's matter? At this time, although several people were here to accompany Li Yuan, they were also waiting for Zhang Feng's news. Hearing this, Li Yuan couldn't help but smile and said, Don't think that old man doesn't know that you are also waiting for that kid, right? Ha ha ha, we are the same. But seriously, can that kid really make this kind of thing? Xue Ji laughed. Seeing that Li Yuan didn't speak, he continued, In fact, if this thing can really be made, it will be a real blessing for the Tang dynasty. At this time, what the Tang dynasty needs most is this kind of thing for the people's livelihood. I remember that in the past, almost every winter, there were many people in the north who were frozen to death, and almost many of the students in our academy came from poor people. If that kid really makes this thing, Xue Ji's eyes narrowed slightly, and his voice suddenly became calm. I think that at that time, not only will the reputation of our academy skyrocket, but this kid will also take advantage of this. This bastard kid, I have heard a lot of words denouncing him during this time. Li Yuan was slightly surprised and asked, There are still people who dare to denounce him? I'm afraid they don't know what this kid will do, right? What can he do? Ouyang Xiu was speechless. He spread out his hands and said, Old master, this is your fault. Wouldn't it be better for him to stay in the academy? He, Zhang Feng, was now an unpolished jade that needed to be carved. In addition, He was the youngest Confucian scholar. At this time, how many people and young people in the Tang dynasty were looking at him? Previously, when he embarked on the path of Junwu, the Shandong side directly spread lies to mislead the public. It's not like you don't know about this. At this time, it's great that this kid can realize his mistake and mend his ways. Therefore, I feel that this matter, whether good or bad, is a good attempt. We can also take this opportunity to shut the mouth of the Shandong side. Li Yuan narrowed his eyes. Although he had been listening to Ouyang Xiu's words that carried a bit of resentment for iron not becoming steel, his eyes had been staring at the old Xiu Kai. He saw that the old Xiu Kai hadn't said a word from beginning to end, and even the expression in his eyes hadn't changed. Li Yuan could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. Could it be, this kid, did he really do it this time? However, at this time, he also heard the dissatisfaction of the 4 Confucian scholars with his previous decision. He glanced at Ouyang Xiu lightly and said, although that's the case, the war in the north is urgent. In addition, Tuli Khan is covetous, as well as the plague of locusts and drought. In these few times, the old foundation of the Tang dynasty has been hollowed out. In this matter, the imperial court has no way at all. Otherwise, why would the old man beg that kid like this? Li Yuan was right. But there was also something wrong. He cleverly bypassed the matter of him urging Zhang Feng to get the new weapons, and the people present did not dare to say anything. They just snorted angrily. If it weren't for you and those stubborn and incompetent people in the imperial court, how could you let Fengzi worry about it? You are so happy. You throw everything to this kid. Don't you think about his future? In case he goes on the wrong path or offends some people in the imperial court who can't be offended in this matter, who will take the blame for him when he becomes an official in the imperial court? Here it comes. At this time, the feminine voice of the old eunuch outside the door instantly attracted everyone's attention. A moment later, Lai Ji rushed in. When he saw so many pairs of eyes staring at him, his whole body began to tremble in an instant. This student greets the teachers, greets the vice principal. What you are holding in your hand, give it to the old man. Li Yuan did not wait for him to finish speaking and directly waved his hand. Lai Ji did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly handed a sheepskin package in his hand to Li Yuan. Yu Shinan and the others did not care about any poise. They hurriedly got up and came to Li Yuan's side. Their eyes stared at the package in Li Yuan's hand. The thing in Li Yuan's hand at this time was not anything else. It was really an auspicious sign from the heavens. If it was true, then in the future, no one in the Tang dynasty would be afraid of winter. The package was very big, only the size of a person's embrace. But Li Yuan actually easily raised it with one hand. Li Yuan also could not wait. His eyes were burning as he hurriedly opened the package. When the package was opened, a red thing jumped out of the package in an instant. It instantly gave everyone a big fright. When everyone reacted, they saw a singlet made of red silk fabric slowly appear in front of everyone. Hiss! Everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Looking at the thing that Li Yuan kneaded into a ball and looked incomparably soft, for words instantly popped up in everyone's mind. Auspicious sign from the heavens. Chapter 1703. Cotton-padded clothes. At this time, Yu Shinan and the others were dumbfounded. Although they had heard of this thing before, because there were also rumors of this matter on the mountain, in order to suppress this matter, they did not dare to leave the mountain at will. Today, seeing Li Yuan go up the mountain, how could they not know that this matter had taken shape? At this time, after seeing the thing in Li Yuan's hand, everyone instantly wanted to take a look. However, Li Yuan had been holding it very tightly, which made them instantly helpless. I say, old master, is this thing really the cotton-padded clothes made by Madman? Made by Saucer? Yu Shinan asked somewhat uncertainly. Li Yuan took a deep breath and rubbed the cotton that was softer than anything he had seen before on his face repeatedly. He nodded and said, it can't be wrong this time. This thing was indeed made by Fengzi. This thing is really an auspicious sign from the heavens. In the future, no one in my Tang dynasty will freeze to death. At this time, everyone was shocked. Seeing Li Yuan like this, everyone stepped forward one after another. A perfectly good piece of clothing was instantly torn and the cotton fluff was flying everywhere. This group of old men, who were about to see the picture, seemed to have seen a rare treasure. The perfectly good cotton-padded clothes could not wait to tear them into pieces and rub them into their cheeks. I'm really a good thing. Why didn't anyone find out that by saucer had such a magical effect before? How did this kid find out the magical effect of this thing? This thing was simply a pity to abandon before. Who would have thought that it would actually be such a divine thing? This is really an auspicious sign. God bless the people of my Tang dynasty. Amidst the waves of exclamations, Li Yuan pressed his hand and let everyone calm down. The significance of this thing was really too great. After all, if the price of buy saucer was spread out, then the price would definitely skyrocket in an instant. This thing was only used to ignite the fire in the past. The few people here were all like the pillars of the Tang dynasty. How could they not think of it at this time? After sighing with emotion for a while, everyone could not help but worry. It was true that this thing was a good thing. But if it was really hyped up by someone, or if this matter was spread out, then the consequences, between the old man and old man, this matter, shouldn't it be kept a secret? About the cotton. I don't think it's going to be easy to hide the matter of Bai Dai easy. After all, that kid has already caused a huge commotion at the foot of the mountain. I think someone has already noticed this matter. Therefore, what we need to do is to clean up this kid's mess. Before this matter spreads, we have to gather Bai Dai easy as fast as we can. Li Yuan's words became a prophecy as he stated where the biggest problem was at this time. The few of them discussed and immediately came up with a countermeasure. After all, there was an absolute problem with this matter. Even if that brat was easy to attract attention, it was impossible for everyone to believe it. The price of the white stack was controlled by the emperor. At this time, almost everyone in the court knew that the emperor was Lao Li. Therefore, who would dare to touch Zhang Feng, the god of plague? The few of them did not worry too much about this matter. The only thing they were worried about was those big clans. Once this matter was completed, the first to bear the brunt would be these big clans. This loss was not just a matter of a few goods. What they would lose was their connections. It was people. It was the market. Once the cotton products were on the market, the first to bear the brunt would be the cloth trade. Then, it would be the biggest cloth trade now, Suang Satin Shop. This was the most important industry of the Jing family in Xinjiang. This industry was not only spread throughout the Tang dynasty, but also involved several countries around the Tang dynasty. More importantly, the Jing family bore the title of the royal family. Once it stopped, then, one could imagine what kind of revenge the Jing family would take. The Jing family was not scary. What was scary was that the 5 families and 7 sects were connected. Once one of them was moved, then it would not only affect the Jing family, but also the entire 5 families and 7 sections. It was very likely that they would officially start a war with the 5 families and 7 sects. Therefore, the few people involved in this matter were so serious. After a while, Li Yuan waved his hand with a slight headache and said, "This matter will be handed over to Erlang and the others. They have already thought of this matter. These days, there is no news from the palace. It seems that he is moving about because of this matter. So, let's not care about this matter. By the way, Brother Zihuai, last time, your family came. What happened to the business with that brat? Why did I hear that this brat owes much to your family's help this time?" In an instant, everyone looked at the old Xiuzai. The old Xiuzai did not know why Li Yuan would ask about this matter at this time. After pondering for a while, he said truthfully, "I don't know about this matter, but I heard from my family that the brat seems to be of great use. But I can guarantee that this matter has nothing to do with the cotton-padded clothes incident this time." "Really?" Li Yuan looked at the old Xiuzai meaningfully and asked. Chapter 1704. That was what Li Yuan would say. After all, the old scholar was once the genius of the Xia family, the pillar of the family. Li Yuan didn't need to be too straightforward to understand some things. Why would the people of the Xia family appear in Cheng and at this time? Why would the people of the Xia family run into Feng Zi so coincidentally? Why would Feng Zi get in touch with the Xia family because of some dried flowers? These were all things that Li Yuan and Li Shimin couldn't figure out. Most importantly, the Xia family used to be so terrifying that even a ruthless person like Yang Guang didn't dare to act rashly. This time, because of Feng Zi, the Xia family seemed to be showing signs of rising. How could the royal family not be worried? Especially the appearance of the cotton-padded clothes. This was something that could instantly make a small family or an insignificant person rise to be comparable to a single family of the 5 surnames and 7 clans in less than a month. In the Tang dynasty, which was surrounded by wolves, there was no room for a second giant like the 5 surnames and 7 clans to appear. At that time, it was precisely because of this that the Wang family was completely wiped out. At that time, the Xia family was too powerful and the old scholar's influence was too great. It could be said that at that time, there was the Cui family of Qinghe in the east and the Xia family of Qin County in the west. These 2 families were famous at that time. They represented the thoughts of Confucianism in the north and the south. Because the Cui family of Qinghe was an important part of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, and because the Tang dynasty was just established, it urgently needed the support of Confucianism. Therefore, the Xia family of Qin County suffered the crazy revenge of the Cui family of Qinghe. That was why the old scholar lived in seclusion in Cheng, and for many years. But why didn't the Xia family come in contact with the old scholar until today? This was something that Li Yuan couldn't figure out. But at this time, the appearance of the Xia family instantly made the whole of Cheng turbulent. Even some people in the imperial court were talking about it. He had to take it seriously. At this time, on the one hand, it was teasing, but more importantly, it was a warning. Who was the old scholar? How could he not know the Tao of this? After pondering for a while, he said, I'm not sure about this at the moment. Other than you, no one else knows about the old man's presence in Chang'an. If it's possible, it's only during the mid-autumn poetry meet that an outsider came here, so. Li Yuan chuckled and waved his hand, saying, I'm just saying. Brother Zihuai, don't think too much. Oh right, this matter of the cotton-padded clothes, what do you all think? After Li Yuan resolutely investigated the matter, he avoided the topic. The old scholar couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. Because of all the things that had happened, even now, he didn't dare to go home and ask what had happened. At this time, Li Yuan asked, he could not help but feel extremely puzzled about why Madame Xia came to Chang'an. It was as if all of this was orchestrated by someone else. However, he still had to go back and ask around before he could get to the bottom of it. The cotton-padded clothes are not bad. And what you said about being able to make a white fold first is also not bad, but I'm afraid that the mountain doesn't have the ability to do that. Hearing the old scholar's words, Li Yuan was stunned and asked, what do you mean? On the mountain, Tai Miao and the others have mobilized all the students of the academy to do something about the textile factory. At this time, they are still in his small wooden house discussing how to do a great undertaking. We can't do anything about it. Hearing the old scholar say so. Seeing the complacent and helpless smiles on the faces of Yu Shinan and the others, Li Yuan just remembered that today on the mountain, it seemed that he really didn't see a single student. So, these stinking brats are doing something about the textile factory? What is Fengzi doing? Li Yuan couldn't help but ask with a difference. However, at this time, no one could answer him. Thinking of this, Li Yuan looked at the cotton-padded clothes in his hands that were torn out of shape. He couldn't help but feel awkward. This is difficult. I really didn't expect that this brat would have such big ambitions. Isn't he afraid of being stuffed to death? The old scholar finally seized the opportunity to counterattack and said lightly, isn't this all because of you? 100,000 sets of military equipment a month, do you really think that Fengzi is an immortal? I actually think that Fengzi is doing the right thing by mobilizing everyone together. Although this will raise the price of the white fold, at least we can solve the military equipment problem within a month. Otherwise, even after the new year, you can forget about it. No wonder Fengzi wants to escape, now you." Hearing the old scholar's words, Li Yuan's cheeks became a little hot. He hurriedly interrupted him and said, "Enough, brother Zihuai, I have to go back and make arrangements first. As for the mountain, this time my family will pay for it. However, tell Tai Niu and the other little bastards, if they dare to neglect, even their Lao Tzu can't protect them." After saying these words, Li Yuan hurriedly slipped away. Only the stunned crowd was left. Chapter 1705. In Chang'an City, it was still hard to see one's fingers clearly. However, Chang'an City had been bustling for a long time. Although the morning market had not opened yet, the east and west markets were already bustling with people. All kinds of peddlers were hawking their wares on the streets. This was especially true for the basketball courts in Tongweifang, as well as the other basketball courts in Chang'an, where business was booming. When the basketball courts were first built, many people were dismissive of them. But gradually, because of Zhang Feng's promise, almost all the rich and powerful came out. Although basketball wasn't able to prolong one's life like Zhang Feng had said, it was still a more acceptable form of entertainment and exercise than the 5 animal frolics. Therefore, at this time, not only were the rich and powerful in Chang'an City scrambling for this thing, the ordinary people were also flocking to it. Especially Zhang Feng's promise. As long as he got the first place in the basketball competition, he would be admitted to White Deer College. White Deer College. At first, no one had taken a liking to it, especially the nobles. But when paper by, the phosphate fertilizer, and Zhang Feng's feats on the mountain came out, it was like a stroke of good fortune had fallen from the heavens. Therefore, there was such a spectacular scene at this time. In the palm-sized Chang'an City, there were more than 100 basketball courts, not including the basketball courts built by the rich and powerful families. Every basketball court had people lining up since the curfew in the morning ended. At this time, even though it had only been 2 hours, there were already countless people queuing up in front of the entrance. There was no other way. Tongweifang was Zhang Feng's nest, and the pub was not far away. If one day Zhang Feng suddenly came back to the pub and Zhang Feng saw it, wouldn't he be able to fulfill his wish instantly? At this time, amidst the cheers, 7 or 8 young men in gorgeous clothes retreated from the basketball court, sweating profusely. In an instant, the peddlers at the side of the basketball court opened their eyes wide and started shouting with all their might. "Fermented rice wine, 2 eggs, hurry." "Okay. Please wait a moment." After 2 short and straightforward conversations, the money in the pockets of the youths was settled. Only then did the crowd's cries of selling their wares stop. "I say, brothers, do you know what happened in the residence of the 16 princes these 2 days?" As soon as they sat down, they started talking. They were all stubborn people in Chang'an, so naturally, they were the most informed. When the fermented rice wine soup was served, they drank it and made a fuss. "Are you talking about President Zhang tinkering with the white folded paper? I believe even the night people in Chang'an know about it. Do you need to talk about it here? Young Master Gua, have you seen Tai Niu and the others? These few brats seem to be very quiet recently. Isn't that so? It's reasonable to say that the 4 great demon kings would definitely appear since there's such a big movement in the Zhang mansion, but could it be that President Zhang did something big?" They couldn't help being surprised when they heard it. One of the young men said, "A few days ago, I saw Chen Xiaoye in the Yan Lai restaurant. I heard that young Master Li of the 4 great demon kings went to the border of Qiuzi. It seemed that President Zhang arranged it. After that, I rarely saw them. Could it be that the Qiuzi war is about to start? No way." At this time, the crowd waiting to show their skills on the court was attracted. Among them, there were several middle-aged men in gorgeous clothes. Looking at their aura and clothes, one could see that they were not ordinary people. When the others heard this, they couldn't help but come forward and ask about it. "Is there any basis for what you said?" "As far as I know, the Zhang mansion sent a large number of people to collect the white folded paper. Even the Chang and local government, Eason snack shop, and Qiantong Money House were involved. Why do I feel that this matter is related to President Zhang's previous engagement? In an instant. Only then did the crowd recall the engagement between Zhang Feng and Zhang Yuyao. In addition, the women who had been going in and out of Zhang Feng's residence in the past 2 days were mostly the more reputable women in Cheng and who knew how to sew. At this time, everything made sense now. Involuntarily, a picture flashed in their minds. That was Zhang Feng was going to get married. Look, isn't that Miss Zhang's maid Shui? At this time, someone exclaimed. Instantly, everyone looked in the direction of the person's finger and saw Shui in emerald green clothes at the entrance of Tonghui Square. At this time, everyone was gossiping. A few young men who thought they were extraordinary hurriedly went forward and invited the confused Shui over. They asked some inexplicable questions at the same time. At this time, Shui was even more confused. She looked at the gossipy faces of the crowd timidly and said, "Where did you hear this from? Why didn't I know?" They were confused. They hurriedly asked, "Miss Shui, is this true? What has President Zhang's family been doing these days?" Shui was speechless. I don't know. If there's anything, go to the son-in-law's house and ask. I still have something to talk to County Magistrate Niu about. Do you want to come with me? Chapter 1706. No one dared to go to the Cheng and county government. Niu Weili was famous for being tricky, especially after he got involved with President Zhang. He cared more about Zhang Feng than his own mother, Lao Tzu. If he found out that they were gossiping here, the consequences, they couldn't help but feel a chill down their spines. They found an excuse and hurriedly left. Today, after little Shui went out, everyone she met took the initiative to greet her. There were even people she didn't know who took the initiative to greet her. As for the questions, they were all about whether Zhang Feng was going to get married. Even Niu Weili was asking about it in a roundabout way. This made little Shui extremely suspicious. Were these people crazy? With the son-in-law's current fame, if it was really going to be a wedding, a month ago, it would have been the talk of the town. How could it be so quiet? There was even a voice that made little Shui feel a little confused. That was, Zhang Feng was going to be promoted. Although recently, everyone in the mansion and Zhang Feng knew had been crazily collecting white stacks, it didn't seem to have anything to do with promotion, right? When little Shui returned to the mansion, she was still thinking about it. She didn't even notice that the roll in her hand that she brought back from Niu Weili for the master was almost in Zhang Shan's mouth. Little Shui, what are you doing? Zhang Shan shouted. Little Shui trembled and came back to her senses. But when she came back to her senses, she trembled and the teacup on the table instantly fell to the ground and shattered. Zhang Shan's face darkened. Little Shui hurriedly said, "Master, please forgive me. I didn't do it on purpose. I just what?" Zhang Shan was in a good mood. Because Zhang Feng, who was originally just a small businessman, could almost do whatever he wanted in Cheng and city. This was all thanks to his good son-in-law. Although they weren't married yet, under the woman's instigation, Yu Yao had already decided to follow Zhang Feng. Although Zhang Shan wasn't sure what Zhang Feng was up to this time, he knew that it was going to be a big deal. It could even change his life. And this time, he had worked with Niu Weili to make a blank stack. He had almost thrown in all his savings. This time, he was also checking the account book with Niu Weili. Who would have thought that this damned maidservant would be like this? This was all because Yu Yao had spoiled him too much. Little Shui saw that Zhang Shan was unhappy, so she hurriedly told him the whole story. Zhang Shan was a little confused when he heard this. Marriage was something that he dreamed of. But that wasn't realistic either. After all, Zhang Feng had said that he would only get married when he became an official in the imperial court. It was still too early. However, Shui's last sentence gave him a glimmer of hope. Could it be that the emperor was really going to give that brat a promotion? After thinking about it carefully, it was really possible. After all, Zhang Feng had made so many things. If he was a normal person, he would have been promoted long ago. How could he be like Zhang Feng? Not to mention the first rank in the imperial court, he could even be promoted to a third-rank official. However, Zhang Shan was a little uncertain. After all, there were some things that he was clear about. Waving his hand, he scolded, "Don't be bewitched by those stubborn people outside. Be careful not to be fooled. If there's nothing else, just stay at home and serve Miss well. If I find out that you're gossiping with those shady people outside again, you'll have to wait for me." Little Chui heard this and instantly became listless as if frost had hit her. The conversation between the two was also heard by Zhang Yuyao, who had just passed by Zhang Yuyao's living room. As soon as little Chui went out, Zhang Yuyao hurriedly called little Chui into the boudoir. In the boudoir, Jing Shu was leisurely playing some strange songs that Zhang Feng had taught her. When she saw the two people coming in, she was a little surprised. Zhang Yuyao asked little Chui to close the door. After closing the window, she said, "Little sister Jing Shu, come quickly. There's something important." "What's wrong, Sister Yuyao?" "Let little Chui say it." Zhang Yuyao excitedly held Jingshu's hand tightly and looked at little Chui. After little Chui finished talking, Jingshu instantly felt relieved. She smiled faintly and said, "Sister, I think it's better to let nature take its course. Prince Zhang has his own plans. When Prince Zhang was buying dried flowers on the street, I faintly felt that Prince Zhang seemed to be planning to go to Jiangnan. Why do you think he's in such a hurry to get married at this time? Moreover, the matter of becoming an official is very important. If it's really going to happen, the imperial court would have already issued an imperial edict. But look, is there one?" When she said this, Zhang Yuyao's face instantly changed. Because she heard an extremely sensitive matter. Jiangnan. Zhang Feng was going to Jiangnan. Jiangnan, Although she had tacitly agreed to this matter, she still felt a little uncomfortable when she heard it at this time. Especially at this time, Zhang Feng was fiddling with the white fold in the mansion. Although the rumors were magical, the two of them were still in the dark about what was going on. Could it be that Zhang Feng was doing all this to go to Jiangnan to see little sister Yu? Zhang Yuyao was instantly enlightened by all of this. First, he met a woman who was buying dried flowers in Chang'an. Then, Zhang Feng found out that the woman was from Jiangnan. Then, he prepared to buy a lot of dried flowers. What was the use of dried flowers? They could only add fragrance to pillows and scented sachets. What was the use of that? However, the final white stack was still a flower. Could it be that Prince Zhang Feng was doing all this to go to Jiangnan? In an instant, Zhang Yuyao couldn't sit still. She hurriedly pulled Jingshu and said, "Little sister Jingshu, let's go back quickly. I think that Prince Zhang is really going to Jiangnan." Chapter 1707. At the same time, in the palace. As the morning bell rang, Li Shimin sat on the dragon throne and prepared for the morning court. Long live the emperor. The officials bowed. Li Shimin waved his hand and motioned for everyone to rise. After the officials rose, the grand scribe stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, the Chiocha army is waiting for us. We can't afford to hesitate. Your Majesty, please make a decision as soon as possible. In addition, the temperature in the north has suddenly dropped. Many soldiers have frozen to death. Your Majesty, please allocate supplies for the soldiers." After that, the grand scribe raised his head slightly and glanced at Li Shimin. However, Li Shimin remained calm as if he did not hear anything. Strange, why is the emperor ignoring the Battle of Chiocha? He could not help but mutter in his heart. At that moment, a military governor walked out and bowed. "Your Majesty, Chiocha is an important border of the Tang dynasty. We cannot afford to lose it. Now that the Turks and Indians are eyeing Chiocha, we should take the initiative to attack and take it." After that, he secretly glanced at Li Shimin. As a general, he naturally hoped to fight a war so that he could earn merits. However, all the decision-making power was in the hands of the emperor. Shut up. The grand scribe suddenly stood up and immediately shouted at the general, ignoring the etiquette of the court. The Tang dynasty has just stabilized and is in the period of development. The people have also just surrendered. How can you act on impulse? You only want to attack and pillage without caring about the people. The Tang dynasty can't start a war now. It's time to negotiate peace. After that, the grand scribe looked at Wei Zheng with a face of reverence. Lord Wei, what do you think? He knew that Wei Zheng was the leader of the civil officials and would usually remonstrate in court. Moreover, as long as it was Wei Zheng's remonstrance, the emperor would listen. As long as Wei Zheng was on his side, there would be no problem. However, Wei Zheng was a little strange today. He held the white jade tablet in his hand and closed his eyes tightly, as if he did not care about the court. Immediately, he felt that something was wrong. Given Wei Zheng's personality, he would have already caused a ruckus in the imperial court. Could it be? What was the secret behind this? At this moment, Overseer stood up again. Your Excellency, you should know the importance of Chuzi even if I don't tell you, right? Why are you acting on impulse? Furthermore, we are confident that we will win this time. Hearing this, the grand scribe gritted his teeth and didn't want to say anything. After all, Wei Zheng's attitude just now had explained everything. But after thinking about it, he braced himself and said, "This war is disadvantageous to our country. It is a waste of manpower and resources." A waste of manpower and resources? The overseer snorted coldly. Is war a waste of manpower and resources? Then what about not having to pay exorbitant taxes this time? As a military general, he had always been at odds with these literati. Motherf *Ker, Lao Tzu's military exploits were earned from killing on the battlefield. As for you guys, you only know how to open your mouth and brag. Well. The grand scribe was at a loss for words. Even if we don't pay exorbitant taxes, how are we going to survive the winter? That's a big problem. The overseer looked at him with disdain. You don't know about this, right? White Deer College's President Zhang is already dealing with it. What kind of joke is this? The grand scribe snorted coldly. Yesterday, I saw White Deer College's President Zhang sleeping in his residence. Hearing this, Li Shimin, who was sitting on the dragon throne, couldn't remain calm. Sleeping in his residence? Was this brat dealing with the cotton clothes? Sleeping in his residence at such a crucial time? Thinking of this, he glanced at the grand scribe and asked, "Tell me in detail, what's going on in Zhang Feng's residence?" Your Majesty, according to what I know, Zhang Feng is sleeping in his residence every day. He didn't prepare any winter supplies. Just as he finished speaking, Li Shimin's expression changed and he looked at Yuchi Gong beside him. Because this matter was handed over to him, Watanabe, the Ministry of Works, and the Western Agriculture Temple. But now it had become like this. Moreover, he hadn't told him what had happened. Being glanced at by Li Shimin like this, Yuchi Gong subconsciously trembled. He muttered to himself, "Oh no." He hurriedly stepped forward. Your Majesty, the winter supplies have always been prepared by Zhang Feng. Recently, he hasn't been at the academy, but at the Zhang residence. The white stacks in his residence are the winter supplies. Everything is going according to plan, and there are no problems. Li Shimin frowned slightly. He didn't know what was going on. However, he still believed Yuchi Gong's words. Forget it, I'll just have to take a look after the morning assembly. The morning assembly ended quickly. Li Shimin came to the imperial study with a gloomy face. He sat upright on the dragon throne and didn't say anything. Obviously, he was waiting for someone. Not long after, a head popped out from outside the door. It was Yuchi Gong. Li Shimin glanced at him, stood up abruptly, and waved his hand. Leave the palace. On the other side, in Zhang Feng's residence. Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao finally arrived in a palanquin. After getting off the palanquin, the two girls lifted their skirts and rushed into the residence. As soon as they entered the residence, the two girls were shocked by the scene in the residence. White stacks. The courtyard was full of white stacks. There was almost no place to walk. Not only that, all the flowers and plants in the front yard had died. To be precise, they were trampled to death. The furniture that had been placed there had long disappeared. There were also many servants who were recording something with account books in their hands. At this moment, Zhang Feng was teaching the servants and maids what to do. At first glance, it looked like clothes. However, the clothes looked a little strange. The two girls couldn't tell exactly how strange it was. Chapter 1708. It felt like a simplified version of the current clothes. Zhang Yuyao looked at Zhang Feng in confusion, unable to speak for a while. She didn't know what was going on in this family. Why did he get so many white stacks? One had to know that white stacks were used by ordinary people to start a fire. Why did he buy so many of them? Not only did Zhang Yuyao find it hard to understand, but Jing Shu was even more so. She stood there in a daze and thought for a long time, but she still couldn't figure out Zhang Feng's thoughts. Finally, the servant standing in the corner noticed them and stepped forward with a smile. "Madams, you're here." As soon as he said that, the busy people around stopped what they were doing and looked at the two women. Zhang Feng also looked over and stepped forward with a smile. "You're here. Come, try my new work." With that, he took out two cotton-padded clothes from the two servant girls. To be precise, they were red cotton-padded clothes. "Put them on and try them on. I just made them." Zhang Feng showed the cotton-padded clothes with a smile and was about to put them on for the two women. The two women looked at the cotton-padded clothes with a strange expression. They had never seen these clothes before. They looked really strange. However, since Zhang Feng wanted them to wear them, of course, they couldn't refuse. The two women looked at each other and put the cotton-padded clothes on their bodies. The moment they put it on, a wave of warmth hit them. It was as if they were wrapped in something. It wasn't that cold anymore. Jing Shu looked at Zhang Feng in shock. "Prince Zhang, this is..." Of course, she knew that it was because of Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng smiled. "This is the cotton-padded clothes I made. How is it? Is it warm?" Zhang Yuyao blushed. Yes, it's very warm." "Thank you, young master." She was quite satisfied with this future husband. Now that he made cotton-padded clothes for her, it was really sweet. Zhang Feng smiled. "Let's go, I'll take you to see the cotton-padded clothes." With that, he pulled the two women to see the cotton-padded clothes. At this moment, a shout came from outside the door. Feng Zi, we're here to see you." Judging from the voices, it was Li Shimin, Li Yuan, and the others. Originally, Li Shimin planned on coming alone, but he did not know how it got to Li Yuan's ears. Unable to dissuade his father, Li Shimin could only bring Li Yuan along. However, when he saw the scene in the courtyard, Li Yuan's expression was even uglier than when his mother died. He was just short of cursing in his heart. "My flowers. How could it be ruined like this?" There were countless dead and maimed people. He was even trampled under someone's foot. Li Yuan pointed at the precious tribute flowers and plants in the flower bed that were already in close contact with the mud. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. "Kid, tell me, what's going on?" Li Yuan pointed at the flowers and plants on the ground. He was really angry. These were his most beloved flowers and plants. How could he not be angry? Li Shimin was also incomparably distressed. He sent people to plant these flowers one by one. These were all tributes. There were even many that were unique, things that could not be bought with money. They were actually treated like weeds in this kid's place, being trampled by everyone. This mother asterisk cur, Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng's face that deserved a beating, wishing that he could go up and give him 2 big slaps. And at this time, looking at the flower bed, his eyes were filled with doubt. Was it right or wrong for the retired emperor to give the resort to Zhang Feng back then? This kid did not know how to cherish it at all. Now, these flowers were ruined like this? Zhang Feng went forward to take a look. Why were these people like this? His heart thumped. But he also did not know what was wrong with him. However, looking at these people's man-eating appearance, he hurriedly laughed. So it's Lao Li and Old Master. After waiting for a few days, you guys finally came. Li Yuan did not pay attention to the grinning Zhang Feng. Instead, he asked directly, let me ask you, what's the matter with these flowers? At this time, he wished that he could strangle this prodigal son to death. One had to know that at this time, Zhang Feng was stepping on a sand devil's snare. That was a flower that was rare even in the western region. This kind of flower was 3,000 strings of cash per stalk. Even in the black market, it was also extremely rare. Moreover, this kind of flower was very fragrant. Even putting a petal of the sand devil's snare in the sachet could let the fragrance of the sachet last for a month without dissipating. But now, this kid, at this time, Zhang Feng also discovered that something was wrong. Seeing that these people were all looking at his feet, his whole body quivered. He hurriedly retreated a few steps and said in surprise, Old Master, what is this? Why are you all like this? What is this? Li Yuan was so angry that he almost rolled his eyes. He pointed at Zhang Feng's nose and said, this is AF** King Sand Devil's Snare. This thing, if placed in a sachet, can let the fragrance of the sachet last for a month without dissipating. Moreover, this thing has the effect of refreshing the mind, calming the soul, and sleeping. Do you know how much this thing is sold for on the black market? Zhang Feng's eyes were about to pop out. Gulp. He swallowed his saliva with difficulty. How much? 1,000 taels of gold. Li Yuan said word by word. One had to know that this stock was a unique item in the Tang dynasty. Back then, Li Shimin spent a lot of effort to get this thing. But in the end, the villa was given to Zhang Feng. He also forgot about this matter. Hearing this, Zhang Feng was instantly dumbfounded. 1,000 taels of gold? This F** King, so expensive? He looked at Yu Qigong and the others with a pleading face. Yu Qigong and the others acted as if they did not see it. They greeted each other and chatted with the people around them. Chapter 1709. He didn't care about Zhang Feng at all. This made him so angry that he wanted to curse. F***ck, why didn't you say so earlier that it was such an expensive thing? Now that it was like this, instead, he came to curse. However, on second thought. That's not right. This is Lao Tzu's place. Since when was it their turn to point fingers at Lao Tzu's place? After figuring everything out, Zhang Feng's guilt slowly lessened. He coughed softly and said, I thought it was something special. It turns out that it's just a perfume. Old man, wait for me. When I'm done with the cotton-padded clothes, I'll get you something nice. This thing, it can be said that it's definitely more fragrant than anything you've ever seen. Hearing this, Li Yuan couldn't help but ask, what good thing are you talking about? He originally had an ulterior motive. Today, he came mainly for the cotton-padded clothes. Although seeing these precious flowers and plants being ruined, he was so angry that his liver hurt. However, this was something that was given away after all. What could he say? Zhang Feng smiled and didn't say anything. He pointed to the living room not far away. After greeting them, they entered the living room. In the living room, Li Yuan and the others were familiar with the way, as if they were returning to their own home. Zhang Feng was like a landlord, lying on the chair comfortably. He took out a cigarette and shook it on the oil lamp. Smoke rose, and he took a deep breath in his mouth. Looking at Zhang Feng's indifferent look, Li Yuan couldn't help but ask, Kid, what is the thing you said that is more fragrant than the sand datura? Zhang Feng exhaled a mouthful of smoke and said slowly, Perfume. Perfume? Li Yuan was stunned. What was this? Could it be that this kid fiddled with something new again? He looked at Li Shimin, Yu Qigong, and the others who were beside him in confusion. Everyone also had question marks on their faces. They helplessly spread out their hands, indicating that they didn't know. To no avail. He shifted his gaze to Zhang Feng and said with a smile, Fengzi, what is this perfume? Tell me. All right, I'll explain it to you. Zhang Feng took a deep breath and looked at everyone. To put it simply, perfume is a substance made from flowers, alcohol, spices, and other fragrant things. After it's made and sprayed on a person's body, the fragrance will last for about 1 to 2 days. It's much better than your sand devil's snare. After saying that, he glanced at the crowd with disdain, as if he was saying that they were a bunch of inexperienced people. So powerful? Li Shimin exclaimed. Everyone looked at Zhang Feng in surprise. It should be noted that most of the things used to enhance fragrance in the Tang dynasty came from spices and flowers. As for these spices, most of them were imported from the western regions. However, they did not last long and would disperse after a few hours. But this kid said that this perfume could last for 1 to 2 days. If it was true, it would be another good news for the nobles of the Tang dynasty. Fengzi, is what you said true or false? Li Yuan hurriedly asked. Everyone also nodded, their eyes shining. Zhang Feng was somewhat speechless and spread out his hands. Of course it's true. I've already started preparing. When everyone heard that, they instantly thought of the woman from the Xia family that Zhang Feng met a few days ago in Chang'an and the dried flowers that she sold. Could it be related to this? Li Yuan's eyes flashed with a touch of heat. He patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said, Kid, you, without waiting for Li Yuan to finish, Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted Li Yuan and said, I'm afraid of you. All right, I'll give it to you first later. Is that okay? Zhang Feng finally got rid of Li Yuan with great difficulty. When he saw Yu Qigong and the other uncouth fellows repeatedly winking at him, his whole body trembled. Damn you. The smell on your body can be smelled from several streets away. You still want to use this? F***ck, however, Zhang Feng did not dare to say it out loud. He could only say maliciously, this thing is too difficult to refine. You can go to the old man and use it first. If it's convenient for you, wait until I mass produce it. Yu Qigong and the others heard that and felt extremely comfortable. After the few of them were finally released from their state of being lovers of flowers, Zhang Feng came back to his senses and asked, by the way, why are you here today? It can't be because of this flower, right? Seeing that the farce was over, Li Shimin pointed at the cotton on Zhang Feng's head and said, it's because of this flower. Cotton. Although Zhang Feng already knew the purpose of their visit, he still couldn't help but ask. Sure enough, these brothers were really in a difficult situation. Even the manufacturing of the guns and cannons didn't require so much effort. Good heavens, how much effort did they have to put into making a small cotton coat? From this, it could be seen that the war in Chuzi City and the weather in the north had reached an unimaginable level. Otherwise, Lao Li and the others would not have come here every 2 to 3 days. Zhang Feng pretended to be surprised and slapped his forehead, saying, Hey. So it's because of this. She pointed to the closed doors in the backyard and said, the cotton-padded clothes can be mass-produced now, as long as the cloth can keep up with the demand. Moreover, there are at least 500 sets of cotton-padded clothes in my residence. Don't be a hands-off shopkeeper. Don't be a hands-off shopkeeper. Come and help me. You guys didn't see that I haven't slept for the past few days. Chapter 17:10. Li Shimin was a little speechless. This guy, if you don't pay attention, he will start bragging. Although it is indeed a little busy, isn't your brother just standing there and commanding? However, Li Shimin did not dare to say anything. He hurriedly pressed Zhang Feng on the chair and personally lit a cigarette for him, saying, Brother, smoke. You've worked hard. It's my fault. How about this, if you need anything, just say it. Seeing this, Zhang Feng's face turned bitter and said, Lao Li, you just saw it. My residence produces a large number of white sheets, and then it is transported to the weaving factory. The production here is combined with the weaving there, and the production and weaving can be done in one line. Hundreds of cotton-padded clothes can be woven in a day. However, this thing is too. Now, the whole Chang'an city is full of rumors about Lao Tzu, and there are all kinds of rumors, cough, cough, cough. Li Yuan looked at Zhang Feng's unceasing manner and was instantly stunned. He choked on a mouthful of smoke and coughed again and again. He hurriedly said, "Come on, kid, don't be so talkative. We are here today for this. If you have anything to say, just say it. Don't talk nonsense. By the way, before that, old man wants to ask you first. Are you sure you can really make hundreds of this thing in a day? Cotton-padded clothes?" Li Shimin also hurriedly nodded. When it came to business, Zhang Feng no longer bragged. Instead, he looked at their faces with disdain and said, "Is what I, Zhang Feng, said wrong? When have I ever told a lie? Not to mention hundreds of pieces, my courtyard is small now. Otherwise, the supply of gauze and cotton cloth can't keep up. Otherwise, 500 pieces a day is not a problem." Everyone widened their eyes and looked at Zhang Feng. Although Zhang Feng's words were a bit exaggerated, when they thought of Zhang Feng's previous industry and the speed of papermaking, everyone was silent at this time. If what Zhang Feng said was true, then no one in the Tang dynasty would freeze to death. The soldiers at the front also had cotton-padded clothes for winter. As for the commoners, they could also generate a series of benefits from this. For example, they could collect white fold silk, sell it, or secretly store the silk. All of these could be exchanged for money. Not to mention whether the price of white fold silk would skyrocket like the cicada pupa, this was also a good thing. The commoners would also be able to make a huge profit because of this. At the very least, the commoners would be able to have a fat new year this year. As for the price, what was that? Although the overall benefits of the Tang dynasty were not very good, the Tang dynasty was not very prosperous. However, there was still some savings in the national treasury. This bit of money. When the cotton-padded clothes were released, it would only be a drop in the ocean. The biggest problem now was the price of the cotton-padded clothes. Once these cotton-padded clothes were mass-produced throughout the Tang dynasty, it would be a great change for the Tang dynasty. Li Yuan and Li Shimin looked at each other and swallowed their saliva. Li Shimin subconsciously asked, "Then how do you plan to price it?" In an instant, everyone fell silent. Even the noise outside the living room seemed to have suddenly stopped at this moment. Everyone seemed to be waiting for this moment, waiting for Zhang Feng to say the price of the cotton-padded clothes. After all, since the cotton-padded clothes were produced, they must be sold. And the price was a big problem. As a new thing, if the price was set too high, ordinary people would definitely not be able to accept it. If the price was set too low, they would lose money and it would harm the interests of the clans. Although Zhang Feng wanted to deal with the clans, now was obviously not the time. The price, Zhang Feng touched his chin and lowered his head to ponder. His mind was spinning quickly. Suddenly, he thought of something and snapped his fingers. 100 coins, how about it? Li Yuan exhaled a mouthful of smoke and nodded, this price is still fair. It doesn't matter if it's a bit more expensive, but... Have you ever thought that if you do this, these clans, as well as merchants, will take advantage of the loopholes, and you will even be in danger? After all, killing a person is still very easy for those big clans. When Zhang Feng heard this, he was shocked at first, then he grinned and said, "Don't worry, old man. Since I, Zhang Feng, dare to accept this business, I have the means to eat it." "What means?" Li Shimin asked in surprise. Zhang Feng waved his hand, indicating for him to calm down. "Lao Li, you have been in the martial arts world for dozens of years, plus our previous cooperation. Have you ever heard me or someone else talk about something?" Li Shimin didn't know what Zhang Feng was talking about. Learning from Zhang Feng, he shrugged and said, "Then tell me, if I knew, I would still be with you." Zhang Feng rubbed his nose. He was not angry, but his mind instantly recalled the legendary story of the South where the clothing business was booming in the future. Only then did he say indifferently, "Dumping model." "Dumping model? What is this?" Li Shimin exclaimed in surprise. Zhang Feng recalled for a moment and smiled faintly. Dumping model refers to the behavior of an export operator of a country or region selling its products to another country's market at a price lower than the normal or average price of the domestic market, or even lower than the cost. The purpose is to defeat competitors, seize the market, and thus bring harm to the same or similar product manufacturers and industries in the importing country. Chapter 17:11. To put it simply, dumping is the act of suppressing the products of other countries or regions at a lower price. At this time, the living room was so silent that a pin drop could be heard. Everyone looked at Zhang Feng in a daze and said nothing. It was not that they didn't want to speak, but they couldn't. Every word of this idea put forward by Zhang Feng struck their hearts deeply. The people sitting here were all think tanks who worried about how to operate the behemoth of the Tang dynasty all day long. To be able to reach this position, was he not an ordinary person? However, what Zhang Feng said now was like a heavenly book, which really made everyone turn pale with fright. But after thinking about it carefully, they found that what Zhang Feng said was indeed not the slightest problem. For example, wasn't it the same principle as the agent production of cotton-padded clothes? Also, this was the same model as the braised meat shop and Chung and hotel. What they needed was just a document and the approval of the Ministry of Works. Just these alone could let them occupy 2/3 of the profit of a piece of clothing. This motherf asterisk cur, this was simply a genius. Li Yuan looked at Zhang Feng for a long time before he calmed down. Fengzi, I really didn't expect that you have understood business so thoroughly. At this time, he had re-examined Zhang Feng because his vision had never been wrong. Li Shimin gave Zhang Feng a thumbs up. Fengzi, you can now be said to be the #1 businessman in the Tang dynasty. After listening to this idea, he seemed to have opened a new world. Although he didn't fully understand, he also benefited a lot. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes at the two and said angrily, "Come on, I'm a businessman in your heart." As soon as these words came out, Li Yuan and Li Shimin couldn't laugh. Yes, what kind of person was Fengzi? Or, what kind of person did he want to be? A businessman? A great scholar? An official? A libertine? Li Shimin stared deeply at Zhang Feng. Fengzi, what kind of person do you want to be? He also wanted to hear Zhang Feng's thoughts. After being together for so long, he had long regarded Zhang Feng as someone he could get close to. Hearing Li Shimin's words, Zhang Feng's lips curled into a meaningful smile. Safe and sound, the richest in the world, a beautiful wife and beautiful concubines, suave and distinguished. Sorry, I'm a rather vulgar person. Li Yuan and Li Shimin glanced at each other, not knowing what to say. What Zhang Feng said was almost the ideal of all men. However, both of them hoped that the other could enter the imperial court and become an official. Sigh, it's a pity that this fellow's heart isn't here right now. Li Shimin chuckled awkwardly but politely. Your wish is really grand. Zhang Feng smiled proudly. Of course. In order to realize my grand dream, I plan to go to Jiangnan next. Jiangnan? Li Yuan exclaimed. It could be said that he knew that place the best. If he wanted to make a fortune, he couldn't leave Jiangnan. Now this kid wants to go to Jiangnan? And more importantly, Yuchi Yu, is also in Jiangnan. As if seeing Li Yuan's doubts, Zhang Feng smiled and said, on one hand, I'm going to Jiangnan to develop light industry. On the other hand, I'm going to produce silk clothing. Does it have nothing to do with you, Li Yuan asked seriously. He really found it hard to believe that this kid going to Jiangnan had nothing to do with Yuchi Yu, Zhang Feng sighed deeply. Part of it is also because of you, After Zhang Feng said this, Yuchi Gong and the others on the side all stared at Li Shimin. Seeing Li Shimin like this, everyone suddenly understood. How could he not know the importance of the matter? After all, this matter was given to him. This kid really went to Jiangnan, wasn't that F** king trapping him? He hurriedly laughed. Yes, Fengzi, let's talk about other things later. Let's talk about your stomach first. The old man didn't eat anything this morning. He said he wanted to come here to eat delicious food. You're good, Zhang Feng glanced at everyone with disdain. They were addicted to freeloading food and drink. But what could he do? Who let his food and drink be too attractive? Zhang Feng shrugged helplessly. Okay, then you wait. I'll go get you braised pork. By the way, let's have a simple hot pot for lunch. Hot pot? Everyone was a little confused. But they didn't care too much. After all, even if there were exotic delicacies like dragon liver and phoenix marrow today, they wouldn't be in the mood to eat it. In less than 2 hours, Zhang Feng walked into the living room with an irresistible aroma. Without needing Zhang Feng to call, everyone was like hungry wolves. They gathered around the table and started eating and drinking, completely ignoring the etiquette between a ruler and his subjects. What etiquette between officials? This was Fengzi's place. Especially that Yuqi Gong. Without even moving his chopsticks, he poured himself a large bowl of wine and gulped it down. It attracted a wave of disdain from everyone. Li Shimin kicked Yuqi Gong, who was gnawing on a pork shoulder. The latter suddenly raised his head and only understood after a moment. He hurriedly poured wine for Zhang Feng and kept persuading Zhang Feng to drink. Zhang Feng couldn't see Yuqi Gong's intentions. He waved his hand to indicate that he couldn't drink. This made Yuqi Gong anxious and he urged him to drink even more eagerly. After a while, he drank 2 large bowls. After a few bowls of wine, everyone's faces were a little red and they were a little drunk. With the help of the wine, Li Shimin asked, Fengzi, how are your cotton-padded clothes now? Chapter 17:12. Zhang Feng picked up a mouthful of vegetables and put it into his mouth before replying, there's basically no problem with making cotton-padded clothes. Why? Do you want it? Li Yuan put down the wine bowl and curled his lips, forget it. Isn't it just stuffing some white stacks into the clothes? How simple is it? With your white stacks of clothes, if I want them, I can find someone to make them myself. Why would I need you to send it? Simple. When Zhang Feng heard this, he immediately became dissatisfied. Old master, you don't know what's good for you. Looks like I need to broaden your horizons today. After saying that, Zhang Feng touched his hot cheeks, walked to the door, and shouted, Jingshu, Jingshu, come here. After a while, Jingshu walked over, wearing a red flower-patterned cotton-padded coat. In an instant, Li Yuan and the others sobered up. Yuqi Gong also put down the wine bowl in his hand. They touched their hot cheeks and stared at Jingshu with wide eyes. What kind of clothes were these? This was the question in almost all of their hearts. Because in their knowledge, they had never seen such clothes. Or rather, in their hearts, these were strange clothes. Fengzi, this is? Li Yuan pointed at Jingshu and asked in surprise. Zhang Feng patted Jingshu's shoulder and smiled with satisfaction. How is it? This is cotton-padded clothes? Li Shimin couldn't help but cry out in surprise. Then, he seemed to have thought of something. Could it be that this was made with white stacks? Zhang Feng smiled slightly and nodded, you're right. This is the clothes I made with white stacks. TSK, Li Yuan couldn't help but click his tongue. He walked to Jingshu's side and asked, Miss Jingshu, is this clothes warm? How is the effect when you put it on? Jingshu's pretty face blushed slightly, and she turned to look at Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng responded with a smile, indicating that he could speak freely. Seeing this, Jingshu slightly bowed to Li Yuan and said with a smile, replying to elderly, the cotton-padded clothes made by Prince Zhang are extremely warm and airtight. Wearing them is like being wrapped in a thick layer of fur, incomparably warm. Moreover, the most important thing is that movement is more convenient and free, reducing a lot of the burden. The moment these words came out, Li Yuan and the others were all dumbstruck. Was there really such magical clothing in this world? Not only can it keep one warm, but it can also facilitate movement. It was truly unbelievable. Li Yuan looked at Jingshu with a meaningful smile. Little girl, you're not saying good things for your sweetheart, are you? Hearing this, Jingshu's pretty face flushed red. She stomped her feet shyly, stole a glance at Zhang Feng, then turned and ran out. Huh, Li Yuan laughed loudly and patted Zhang Feng's shoulder. You're really lucky, kid. Yeah, you, kid. Li Shimin also laughed at the side. That's right, of course I'm lucky. Zhang Feng raised his head with a smug look. This kid. Li Yuan and the others looked at Zhang Feng's appearance and could not help laughing loudly. After fooling around for a while, everyone returned to their seats. Zhang Feng looked at Li Yuan and said with a slight mystery, Come, elderly, I'll tell you another good thing. When Li Yuan heard this, his interest was piqued. He poured another bowl of wine and quietly listened to Zhang Feng's next words. Zhang Feng took a sip of wine and looked at Li Yuan. Elder, I'm preparing to make a leather jacket next. What do you think? Leather jacket? Li Yuan was stunned. What was this thing? Never heard of it. What is this? Li Yuan could not help but ask. Zhang Feng drank the remaining wine in the bowl in one gulp and said with a smile, Leather jacket is clothes made of leather. Leather can be made into clothes? Li Shimin at the side asked subconsciously. Of course, the clothes made of it are not only warm to wear, but also won't get dirty. Zhang Feng smiled proudly. As soon as these words came out, Li Yuan's eyes turned green, and he hurriedly asked, Then when are you going to make some? Let me try it first. Make, of course I have to make it. Zhang Feng roared and said, That's why I'm preparing to go to Jiangnan next. Hearing this, the faces of Li Yuan and the others changed color. Good boy, so he was waiting here. Fengzi, must you go to Jiangnan? Li Yuan stared at Zhang Feng with a serious face. In his heart, he really did not want the other party to go to Jiangnan. No one understood Jiangnan better than him. There were many clans there, and all of them were guys who ate people without spitting out the bones. If this boy went, could he still come back? However, Zhang Feng did not think so. He looked at the crowd with a serious face. I naturally have my reasons for going to Jiangnan. Jiangnan is known as the hometown of silk. I'm going there this time to open the door of silk. Moreover, it's the stronghold of the Silk Road on the sea. Once we get hold of it, we can completely monopolize the entire Silk Road. In addition, the leather jacket I just said needs to be made in Jiangnan. Like cotton-padded clothes, once the leather jacket is successfully produced, it will be the gospel of the people of the Tang dynasty. Also, I'm going to see you, At the end of his words, his tone slowed down and he sighed. Li Shimin could naturally understand Zhang Feng's thoughts and hurriedly advised, Fengzi, don't worry, you, will be fine. We've sent guards over. Moreover, with your reputation and hers, no one dares to touch her. Yes. Yu Qigong also hurriedly interjected, if you're leaving, who will take care of these stalls? Chapter 1713. Zhang Feng wants to leave, he can be said to be the most anxious. In the beginning, the two of them worked together to build the textile factory. Now that Zhang Feng is gone. Isn't that pushing him into the fire pit? Zhang Feng doesn't care and is about to express his intentions. At this time, the housekeeper Du Ziding hurriedly walks in. Master, there's a woman outside asking for an audience. She also brought 50 dawn of dried flowers. Master must personally check. Zhang Feng puts down the wine bowl and glances at the door. Woman? I don't know any woman. Could it be that Madame Xie? Go invite her in. Zhang Feng waves his hand, indicating for Du Ziding to leave. A moment later, Du Ziding leads a woman in. It's that Madame Xie, Xie Chuyan. She's also carrying a basket full of dried flowers. As soon as she enters, Xie Chuyan's gaze falls on Li Yuan and the others, never leaving. She hasn't seen these people before, but to be able to sit next to Prince Zhang, they should be extraordinary. Especially that middle-aged man, his appearance is out of the ordinary. Between his eyebrows, he exudes the aura of a superior. He should be Lao Li. And that older man, sitting upright on the chair, calm and composed, his whole body exudes an appearance of being in control of the situation. He should be Patriarch Li. As for the other one, holding the wine pot without letting go, he should be a subordinate, a thug. It seems that this group of people are the legendary merchants in Chang'an. Could it be, they are Lao Li's group that Zhang Feng is on good terms with? Just as her mind is spinning fast, Zhang Feng comes up to greet her. Madam Xia, how have you been? Xia Chuyan is the family of the old scholar after all. No matter what, she can't be rude. Thank you for asking, master. This concubine has always been well, but I didn't know Prince Zhang had guests here. Please forgive my rudeness. Xia Chuyan bows. No need to be polite, these are my good friends. Please sit. Zhang Feng smiles faintly and points to the chair next to him. Xia Chuyan nodded and straightened her skirt before sitting down slowly. She placed the basket on her lap and looked at Zhang Feng with a faint smile. Young master, I've already taken care of the dried flowers. They're all outside the courtyard. Today, I've brought some samples for young master to enjoy. Zhang Feng glanced at the dried flowers in the basket, then looked at Xia Chuyan and smiled. Thank you, madam. Young master, what are you talking about? I was just doing something insignificant. Xia Chuyan waved her hand and handed the basket to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng took the basket and placed it at his feet. Xia Chuyan pointed at the courtyard and asked curiously, Young master, why are there so many white stacks in your courtyard? She had already noticed it when she entered the room, but she had held it in until now. Oh, you mean that? Zhang Feng glanced at the courtyard and slowly said, That's the raw material I'm going to use to make cotton-padded clothes. Cotton-padded clothes? What is this? Xia Chuyan couldn't help but ask. Zhang Feng smiled faintly. That's the winter clothes I made. It's airtight and as warm as summer. Moreover, it can guarantee that you can move freely. As soon as his voice fell, Xia Chuyan's delicate body trembled. Zhang Feng's words were like a bolt from the blue, exploding in her mind. Cotton-padded clothes? Dried flowers? Could it be that Prince Zhang is going to use dried flowers to make clothes? Her family had a silk business that was once popular, but she had never heard that dried flowers could be made into clothes. She only knew that dried flowers could be made into sachets. Prince Zhang is indeed extraordinary. I admire you. Xia Chuyan bowed, her eyes revealing a respectful expression. Li Yuan also nodded, thinking that what she said was correct. He then asked, Madam, I wonder what you came to the Zhang estate for this time? Hearing this, Xia Chuyan shifted her gaze to Li Yuan, secretly sizing him up. This should be the master of their group. After sizing him up, she replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. This time, I came to deliver flowers to Prince Zhang. Deliver flowers? Li Yuan didn't understand. The flowers he gave Zhang Feng were no less than 1,000, and the result? They were all King ruined by this prodigal son. This time, what kind of flowers did you buy? He looked at Zhang Feng, asking suspiciously, Kid, why do you still want flowers? Do you think you haven't ruined them enough? Without waiting for Zhang Feng to answer, Xia Chuyan interjected, These flowers are not flowers of the past. Moreover, this time, I gave Prince Zhang 50 stone flowers, all of which are placed in the courtyard. What? 50 stones? Li Yuan exclaimed. Even Li Shimon's eyes widened. Yu Qigong was no longer in the mood to drink. This is 50 stones. One stone is roughly equivalent to 120 caddies in the future. After conversion, 50 stones is equivalent to 6,000 caddies. This is not grain. If you eat it slowly, you can finish it one day. What's the use of flowers? It's nothing more than ornamental. However, 6,000 caddies of flowers, how long will it take to appreciate them? At this moment, in their eyes, Zhang Feng had become a prodigal son. Fengzi, what do you want so many flowers for? Li Yuan stared at Zhang Feng with the air of an old man. As an elder, if Zhang Feng went astray, he must pull him back. That's right, Fengzi. If you want flowers, just tell me. I'll give you a few stalks. Li Shimon couldn't stand it anymore and said from the side. Chapter 17:14. Zhang Feng felt a headache coming on and hurriedly said, We'll talk about this later. I'll give you a big surprise then. Then, without waiting for a reply, he shouted at the door, "Old Du, go to the accounts room and get some money." Then, he looked at Xie Chuyan and smiled. "Come, madam, let's have some tea." "Madam, I heard that the Xie family is quite famous in Jiangnan. May I ask if you've heard of a girl called Yu Yu?" Yu Yu? Xie Chuyan was stunned. Li Shimin couldn't help but be shocked. He coughed and said, "Old Yu, how can you let Fengzi pay for such a small thing? Take it as a gift from me. Take Madame Xie to see the flowers and discuss the future needs of the flowers. I have something to ask Fengzi." Yu Qigong had been shocked by Zhang Feng's words. When he heard Li Shimin's words and saw the look in his eyes, how could he not understand? He hurriedly accepted the order. When Xie Chuyan heard that, she could only follow Yu Qigong out. After all, they weren't just here to sell these things today. There was also the huge deal of dried flowers in the future. After all, dried flowers were plentiful in Jiangnan. They were bought for less than a copper coin per caddy, but Zhang Feng wanted to buy them for 2 copper coins per caddy. Once this deal was done, she and her family would have a firm foothold in Chang'an. Xie Chuyan followed behind Yu Qigong in silence. Finally, they stopped at a study. Yu Qigong turned around and stared coldly at Xie Chuyan without saying a word. At that moment, the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became tense. Xie Chuyan looked at the man in front of her and felt that he was a stranger. Since their first meeting, she had always thought that this man was just an ordinary servant or thug. But now, the feeling he gave her was incomparably heavy. It was like a sharp blade that could pierce her heart if she wasn't careful. She didn't think that her judgment would be wrong. But, now, everything in front of her was a slap in the face. Finally, the oppressive atmosphere eased a little. Yu Qigong was the first to speak. He slowly turned around and stared into Xie Chuyan's eyes. "Madame Xie, I am Yu Qigong. The Yuqi family in Jiangnan is my family." "What?" Xie Chuyan's body suddenly trembled. This person was Yu Qigong? What about the people in the living room? Seeing how respectful Yu Qigong was to those people just now, they must be of a higher status than Yu Qigong. He was even nobler than Yu Qigong. Then it could only be the current emperor. She didn't dare to think any further. Because she knew that these things had already exceeded her understanding. Her body was trembling slightly, and she didn't dare to raise her head to look at Yu Qigong. She could only secretly shrink her feet and distance herself from him. Seeing this, Yu Qigong nodded in satisfaction. "It's good that you know. Don't say it out loud. It's not good for anyone. Now, our identities are what you know. As for Yu, she's the daughter of my uncle, Yu Qimeng. Do you understand now?" Yu was Yu. Xie Chuyan was stunned. She, who had lived in Jiangnan for a long time, was very familiar with this name, because the Yuqi family could be considered a household name in Jiangnan. Because of Yu Qigong's reputation, everyone gave them face. So this Yu and Zhang Feng? She didn't continue to think about it, because she was afraid that she would know something she shouldn't know. Yes, this concubine understands. Xie Chuyan hurriedly agreed. She was just a downtrodden woman. How could she dare to offend the person in front of her? She could only agree repeatedly. Yu Qigong nodded in satisfaction. "Then let's go back." Xie Chuyan didn't dare to say a word of no. She followed behind Yu Qigong from a distance, cautious and cautious. At the same time, in the living room, Zhang Feng was annoyed by Li Shimin's harassment. He was sitting alone in a chair and drinking wine. Seeing this, Li Yuan went up to him and said with a smile, "Fengzi, the cannon you made for me last time almost caused trouble. Shouldn't you compensate me?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng was instantly dumbfounded. "He made the cannon himself for you to use, and you still want me to compensate you after causing trouble? What kind of logic was this?" Sure enough, both father and son were equally shameless. Of course, he couldn't say this out loud. He glanced at Li Yuan in disdain and said faintly, "Then I'll teach you a new kind of poker game later." How about it? Boring. Li Yuan waved his hand. I'm tired of playing poker. Do you have any new things? Hearing this, Zhang Feng instantly had a headache. If you don't go out every day, you'll get tired of playing anything. His mind spun quickly. Finally, he thought of something. How about this, when I'm done, I'll make something called mahjong for you to play with. Mahjong? Li Yuan became interested and hurriedly asked, what is this mahjong thing? Chapter 1715. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes and suddenly smiled. This is a game for 4 people to play. Everyone is gathered around a table, rubbing the tiles, counting the tiles, and looking at the tiles. The entire set of mahjong has 144 tiles, made up of coins, suazi, and wangguan. There are 9 tiles of each type. The basic playing style is simple and easy to learn, but there are many variations. The combinations vary from person to person. Playing this can make the family harmonious, promote unity, and enhance friendship. Moreover, I once heard from my teacher that he went to a place where men and women had to play 2 rounds every day, or else they would feel uncomfortable all over. As soon as he finished speaking, a pa sound was heard. Looking over, they saw Li Shimin glaring at Zhang Feng with a pair of tiger-like eyes. His palms slammed on the table, already red. This is gambling that harms people. He was harmed by playing cards, so he knew what was going on as soon as he heard it. Naturally, he was angry. Hey, how is this gambling? Zhang Feng waved his hand, indicating that Li Shimin should not be angry, and then explained, this kind of thing, if made small, is entertainment. If made big, it is gambling. However, the bad thing is the human heart. Some people, greedy for benefits, will treat it as a gambling game. This is actually the work of the human heart. As the saying goes, small gambling is good for the mood, big gambling is bad for the body. Yes, Fengzi is right. Li Yuan clapped his hands and cheered, looking at Zhang Feng with a smile. Fengzi, you have to make it as soon as possible. If you need anything, just tell me. He was cooped up in the palace every day, and was tired of playing cards. Now that Zhang Feng said a new thing, he was naturally the happiest. Zhang Feng nodded, revealing a troubled expression. It is not difficult to make, but the funds. While speaking, he glanced at Li Yuan from time to time. Little guy, if you want me to make it for you, then you have to give me some funds. Facing Zhang Feng's annoying look, how could Li Yuan not understand, and was about to speak. A series of footsteps came from the door. Everyone looked towards the door. It was Yuqi Gong and Xie Chuyan. Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly went up to greet her. Madam Xie, you're finally back. What took you so long? Please take a seat. Xie Chuyan nodded. She glanced at Li Yuan and the others from the corner of her eyes, and her gaze finally landed on Yuqi Gong. She didn't find anything strange, so she slowly sat down. Zhang Feng looked at Xie Chuyan and smiled. Madam Xie, you have lived in Jiangnan for a long time. Do you know a woman called Yu Yuer? Xie Chuyan's heart thumped. Wasn't this the Yuqi Yu that Yuqi Gong had mentioned earlier? She knew a lot about Yuqi Yu, but Yuqi Gong's words made her hesitate. Should he say it or not? Seeing this, Yuqi Gong quickly winked at Xie Chuyan, indicating for her to tell the truth. Xie Chuyan understood, then looked at Zhang Feng and said, Prince Zhang, I know Yu Yuer, but now a playboy from the Jiangnan clan is pestering her. What? Zhang Feng's expression changed. He suddenly stood up and slapped the table beside him. That reckless fool dares to pester my woman? After that, he waved his sleeves, walked to the door, and roared, old do, order people to seize the weapon. Damn it, he dares to touch Lao Tzu's woman. He must be tired of living. Damn it, order people to go to the mountain and get me 3 cannons. Call the security team and go to Jiangnan. Hearing this, Li Shimin and the others' faces turned green. They quickly stood in front of Zhang Feng. Fengzi, don't be impulsive. You can't go to Jiangnan now. The guns haven't been made yet. Yes, if you go, what about the Battle of Chutsi? And now the matter of the cotton-padded clothes hasn't been settled. If you go to Jiangnan, who will take care of this mess? Everyone was talking at once. Zhang Feng glanced at them and fixed his gaze on Li Shimin. I have already taught the people in the courtyard how to make cotton-padded clothes. You just need to call them out and bring them to a place where there is no one around to set up the factory. After that, Zhang Feng ignored everyone. He waved his sleeves and prepared to walk out of the door. Li Shimin grabbed Zhang Feng and said anxiously, Fengzi, you can't leave now. There are so few armors now. If you leave, there will be no one to take charge of the situation. What will happen? Zhang Feng waved his hand and said impatiently, that is only a matter of time. Moreover, the workshop is already on the right track. It can be settled. But how can the workshop work without you? Li Shimin grabbed Zhang Feng and said quickly, isn't he just a playboy? I will immediately contact Lord Zhangsun and send troops to the Jiangnan road to destroy that guy. What do you think? Zhang Feng waved his hand, indicating that there was no need for that. He had his own plans. He had to go to Jiangnan. On one hand, it was to develop silk. Jiangnan was known as the hometown of silk. It was an important place to develop clothes. Moreover, it was close to the coast. These new clothes had to be developed by the coast. After all, it was convenient to transport them by water. On the other hand, it was perfume. Dried flowers were abundant in Jiangnan. It was more conducive to research and development there. Also, it was because of you, He wondered how she was doing in Jiangnan. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng's desire to go to Jiangnan became more urgent. Fengzi, you can't leave now. Once the cannon is exposed, it will have a great impact on the war in Chotzi. Li Shimin grabbed Zhang Feng and refused to let go. Zhang Feng shook off Li Shimin's arm and said fiercely, enough, Lao Tzu's woman is being chased. If it were you, would you tolerate it? Chapter 17:16. Li Shimin nodded awkwardly. He was a king, so he naturally prioritized the country. Why would he care about these personal relationships? However, Zhang Feng was different. He had a different perspective from Li Shimin, so he naturally could not understand. Okay, you're a ruthless person, but Lao Tzu can't do that. Zhang Feng gave Li Shimin a thumbs up and was about to rush out. At that moment, Yu Qigong moved in a flash and blocked Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng pointed at Yu Qigong's nose and said angrily, Old you, even you want to stop Lao Tzu. That's your sister. Yu Qigong patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and said, Feng Zi, you can't be impulsive now. The cannon is a top secret. If it's exposed, it'll be difficult to deal with it if people from all walks of life find out. Hearing that, Zhang Feng frowned. He could ignore everything else, but he couldn't ignore the people from all walks of life. After creating so many things, he had already made a huge enemy of the people from all walks of life. Sooner or later, they would have a falling out. It would not be a wise choice to expose it now. Okay then, I can't go now, but I have to go before the new year. Also, you have to ensure your safety before I go. As for that kid, I'll take care of him. Zhang Feng glanced at everyone and said slowly. Hearing this, everyone was overjoyed. Only then did they feel at ease and agree. Okay, that's not a problem. As long as you've thought it through. Come, sit down and talk. Yu Qigong hurriedly pulled Zhang Feng to sit down, afraid that he would run away. The fight finally ended. Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin and said, Actually, I've already made the gun. After I'm done with the cotton clothes, I'll leave everything here to you. I'll go to Jiangnan. As soon as he said that, Li Shimin and the others were shocked. What? You made the gun? Li Shimin hurriedly asked. Zhang Feng waved his hand and coldly snorted, Isn't it just a gun? I made it a long time ago, it's just that I haven't tested it yet. Come. I'll bring you guys to broaden your horizons. I'll also hand over the matters to you bunch of hands-off shopkeepers. Lao Tzu is so busy that he's dying, but you guys are so free. Now, no one is having a good time. Okay, let's go up the mountain. Let's go. Yuchi Gong agreed with a joyful expression. Ever since he went to the workshop and saw the horsewhips, Mitsubishi bayonets, and other things, he couldn't suppress the enthusiasm in his heart. It was the same for Li Shimin. He was the emperor of horseback, so he naturally loved these things. Zhang Feng left Xia Chuyan at home while he led everyone to Shao Mountain. The workshop was built on the edge of a cliff on Mount E. The entrance was a cave, and after expansion, it now had 6 floors. Each floor was used to research Zhang Feng's new weapons. The group finally arrived at the entrance of the cave. Zhang Feng led the way in front, Li Shimin and Li Yuan walked behind him, and Yuchi Gong brought up the rear. As soon as they entered the cave, a pungent smell of gunpowder assaulted their nostrils. Li Shimin frowned and rolled up his sleeves to cover his nose and mouth. Li Yuan also quickly followed Li Shimin's example. Yuchi Gong was the same, his face flushed red from holding it in. Not long after, a series of metallic sounds came from the cave, like a string of beautiful notes. Although it was disorderly, it added a lot of color to this spacious cave. The deeper they went, the higher the temperature. Li Shimin even felt his body begin to heat up, and sweat kept dripping from his forehead. At this moment, he wished he could turn around and leave. But thinking that he was about to see a gun, he calmed down. He wiped the sweat from his forehead and gritted his teeth as he walked forward. Yuchi Gong was the same, beads of sweat the size of beans pouring down. This temperature was hotter than the hottest days of the year. Who could endure it here? Fortunately, he was a military general, and his endurance was strong, and he was still walking forward. And Li Yuan was supporting Yuchi Gong, panting heavily. He was a little exhausted. Finally, everyone walked through the passage with difficulty and came to the cave. At this time, the temperature in the cave was very high. A table was placed in the middle, and many messy parts were placed on it. There were dozens of oil lamps on the table, illuminating the cave as if it was daytime. There was a large furnace around, and a few shirtless men were taking something from the furnace. Looking carefully, it looked like a long sword, but it was a little different. Those men took out the long sword, placed it on the stone platform beside them, and started to beat it. Ding! Ding! It formed a series of striking notes. As soon as they came in, Li Shimin and the rest were like entering a grand garden, opening a new world. The forging workshop this time was very different from the last time, and there were many new things they had never seen before. They looked around, and finally, their gazes locked onto a treasured sword made of fine steel, completely forgetting about the gun. They could not be blamed for being distracted, but this sword was too strange. The total length of the sword was about 1.6 to 1.7 meters, and the handle alone took up nearly 1/3 of the entire sword. The blade was slender, about 2 to 3 fingers wide, and the cold light was quite intimidating. Feng Zi, isn't your sword too long? Yuchi Gong took a step forward and carefully examined the long sword. He was a soldier, and he could see the shortcomings of this long sword at a glance. It was too long, and it was not suitable for fighting the enemy. Ordinary people could not use it at all. What's the name of this sword? How do I use it? Li Shimin could not help but ask. Chapter 1717. He had once led troops into battle and was rather passionate about weapons. Zhang Feng thought for a moment and said, "This saber is called a miaodao. It's just the right length and has the characteristics of both a saber and a spear. It can also be used one-handed or two-handed. This makes it easier to utilize the overall strength of the back. When used against an enemy, it can be used in a series of twists and turns. It's swift and fierce, and the saber will follow the user's movements." Really? Yuchi Gong glanced at the miaodao in disbelief. "If you don't believe me, you can try it." Zhang Feng glanced at the crowd and finally fixed his gaze on Yuchi Gong with a faint smile. "Try it?" Yuchi Gong looked at the crowd in surprise. "Let's try it." With that, Yuchi Gong began to roll up his sleeves, eager to try. Seeing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly waved at the crowd. Everyone, stop what you're doing and spread out. Give old you some space. As soon as he said that, the crowd hurriedly stopped what they were doing and hid far away, afraid of being accidentally injured. Yu Qigong glanced around and saw that the crowd had spread out. He held the saber hilt with both hands and picked it up with a light push. He first stabbed forward and then slashed behind him. The more he used it, the smoother it became. He began to wave it in the air. Soon, he had grasped how to use the miaodao with ease. Seeing that Yu Qigong was getting more and more excited, Zhang Feng hurriedly shouted, "All right, old you, stop." Hearing this, Yu Qigong slowed down his movements and reluctantly put down the long blade. He wiped the sweat on his forehead and said with a smile, "This blade of yours is really not bad. If you use it with cavalry, you might be able to achieve the effect you mentioned just now." Zhang Feng nodded. Of course. The miaodao is thin and long, especially suitable for light cavalry. Good. With this saber, when you present it to the imperial court, you might be rich again. Li Shimin patted Zhang Feng and smiled. From Yu Qigong's demonstration just now, he could see that the miaodao was extraordinary. If it was used on the battlefield, it might be able to achieve unexpected gains. Zhang Feng smiled and said, "Well, we're done looking at the saber. Let's go look at the spear." "Io, how could I forget about this? Go, go, go." Li Shimin slapped his head and hurriedly pulled Zhang Feng to look at the gun. With that, Zhang Feng led the way to another cave. As soon as they entered, everyone was shocked by everything in front of them. There were all kinds of weapons in the cave, as well as some things that he couldn't even name. These things attracted everyone's attention, making it hard for them to take a step forward. "Feng Zi, these are..." Yu Qigong pointed at the weapon and spoke first. As a soldier, the only thing that could attract him was his weapon. "Those are the ones I created earlier." Zhang Feng was very satisfied with everyone's performance and smiled. Li Shimin pointed to the rows of long poles beside him and asked, "What about these?" Zhang Feng smiled and said, "Those are the firearms I mentioned before." "These are the firearms?" Li Shimin exclaimed. He hurriedly picked one up and looked left and right. Other than the fact that it looked strange, he couldn't figure out what was so powerful about it. This thing was like a long pole. How could it be used to kill enemies? Could it stab the enemy to death? Just as Li Shimin was puzzled, Yu Qigong also picked up a firearm and held it in his arms, unwilling to let go. "Feng Zi, how many of these do you have? Give me some." Zhang Feng asked curiously, "What do you want them for?" Yu Qigong chuckled and said, "For my family's guard." Hearing this, Zhang Feng immediately rolled his eyes and said, "These are not for you to play with. I'll make you something called a pistol someday." "No." Yu Qigong still refused to let go and looked as if the gun belonged to him. "You have a bad memory. Can you really remember it when the day comes?" Zhang Feng was speechless, but he still tried to persuade him. "Don't worry, I'll make it for you when the time comes. I haven't used the gun in your hand yet. It's dangerous." "Dangerous?" Yu Qigong jumped high and hurriedly threw the firearm down. He glared at Zhang Feng and said, "Why didn't you say it was dangerous earlier? You want to harm me?" Zhang Feng rolled his eyes at Yu Qigong and said angrily, "You wanted to play with it yourself. Don't blame me." Li Yuan, who was waiting on the side, was a little impatient. He hurriedly interrupted and said, "All right, Feng Zi, don't keep us in suspense. Quickly tell us how to use this thing." Hearing this, everyone's gazes converged onto Zhang Feng, and they had curious expressions. Zhang Feng smiled and bent down to pick up a firearm. He looked at everyone and said, "It's simple. There's a cartridge in this firearm. Fill it with steel balls and gunpowder, then pull the trigger. The steel balls shoot out and it can kill the enemy." After that, Zhang Feng bent down to pick up a handful of steel balls and showed them to everyone. "These are steel balls. They're also used to kill enemies. You can kill enemies with just this little thing?" Li Shimin took a steel ball from Zhang Feng's hand with a look of shock. He felt that his worldview was about to collapse. How could something as simple as an iron sheet be used to kill enemies? Then wouldn't the swords and sabers he used in the past be useless? Yu Qigong was the same. He looked at the steel balls in Zhang Feng's hand and found it hard to believe. How could this strange weapon with steel balls kill enemies? Chapter 17-18. Zhang Feng looked at everyone's doubtful eyes and smiled. I knew you wouldn't believe me. Let's go. I'll show you. After that, Zhang Feng yelled at the entrance of the cave, Al-Kinnan, get 2 men to carry the muskets and some wooden signs. Not long after, Al-Kinnan came over with 2 big men. Dean. Tell them to move the muskets to a flat area and bring out some steel balls. After that, Zhang Feng led Li Shimin and the others out of the cave. Not long after, they arrived at a slightly spacious area. Algernon and the 2 large men followed behind them. Arcanon, set up 4 wooden signs 100 meters in front of me. Draw 10 circles on them, and write numbers from 1 to 10 on each circle from the outside to the inside. Zhang Feng pointed at the spacious area in front of them and said to Al-Kinnan. Al-Kinnan didn't know what Zhang Feng wanted to do, but he didn't ask. He just nodded and did as he was told. After a while, the wooden signs were all set up. The crooked circles were drawn on them. Zhang Feng picked up a gun and checked it. After making sure there was nothing wrong with it, he opened the bullet hole, bent down, grabbed a handful of steel balls, and started to press the bullet. As he pressed the bullet, he looked at everyone. Now, I'll show you how this thing kills the enemy. Hurry up, kid. Don't waste time. Yu Qigong and the others rubbed their palms together and looked at Zhang Feng with sparkling eyes. At the same time, they were also very curious about how this thing killed the enemy. If this thing was useful, they could get some and send it back to the border guards. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes at Yu Qigong. He had finished pressing the steel balls in his hand. After checking again and making sure there was nothing wrong, he placed the butt of the gun on his shoulder. The eyes, the bullet hole, the crosshairs, and the wooden board were all in the same line. The series of actions were done perfectly. Although it looked good, it was actually his first time shooting a gun. He looked at the wooden board and was still a little nervous. After hesitating for a while, he finally pulled the trigger. Bang! A 3-foot-long flame burst out from the barrel of the gun, and in an instant, a steel ball flew out. Just then, a rustling sound came from the surrounding forest. Suddenly, a flock of frightened birds flew out and scattered in all directions. Li Shimin and the others covered their ears tightly as if they had heard something terrifying. What are you guys standing there for? Zhang Feng put down his gun and glanced at the crowd as he asked doubtfully. Li Shimin was shocked, his eyes wide open. Brat, why didn't you say that the sound of this gun is so loud? Yeah, did you do it on purpose? Li Yuan shook his head, his face full of dissatisfaction. Sorry, I forgot to mention it. Zhang Feng smiled awkwardly and quickly changed the topic. Let's go, let's see how the planks are. With that, Zhang Feng walked straight to the wooden plank. Everyone rolled their eyes at Zhang Feng and followed closely behind. Sigh, that's not right, I clearly saw the steel ball fly out. Zhang Feng held the wooden plank and looked left and right, but he could not find any traces of the steel ball. It seemed that he had missed the target. Seeing this, Yu Qigong looked at Zhang Feng with disdain. That's it? Zhang Feng was instantly dumbfounded. He touched his head, not knowing what went wrong. A moment ago, he was still showing off, look at my divine weapon. The next second, he was slapped in the face by reality. This was too much of a slap in the face. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng quickly covered it up. This is just a test, it's normal to have problems. Hearing this, everyone was happy. Alright, Fengzi, don't do it. That's right. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes. Don't bother. Hearing this, Zhang Feng immediately jumped up. What are you talking about? Who am I, Zhang Feng? Why would I make a mistake? Why would I do such a thing? Just you wait, I'll give you another shot, watch carefully. As he spoke, Zhang Feng ran back to his original position, picked up the gun, and looked at it. He thought to himself, damn it, what's going on? I made this gun according to my grandfather's gun in my memory. There's nothing wrong with it. Could it be that I made a mistake? After fiddling with it for a while, he confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the gun. Zhang Feng pressed down on the steel ball again and placed the gun on his shoulder. He prayed in his heart, please don't make a mistake. Otherwise, where would Lao Tzu put his face? After praying, he suddenly pulled the trigger. With a bang, the gun barrel emitted a tongue of flame, and the wooden sign shook. I hit it, I hit it. Zhang Feng hurriedly threw down the gun and ran toward the wooden sign excitedly. For a newbie like him, hitting the target was not an easy task. Hearing this, the crowd also gathered around, their gazes converging on the wooden plaque. At this time, the steel ball was fixed on the number 9, a few centimeters more and it would have missed the target. Old Master Li, Lao Yu, come, take a look, this is my gun, this is the power of my gun. Zhang Feng crossed his arms in front of his chest, glanced at everyone, and said with a proud face. Li Shimin looked at the wooden sign. Although he did not know what the numbers were for, he could see that the gun was not very powerful, after all, it could not even penetrate the wooden board. Chapter 17:19. He curled his lips and said disdainfully, it's all right, but its power is mediocre. It can't even penetrate a wooden board. Also, its accuracy is too bad. What? Zhang Feng couldn't take it anymore. He glared at Li Shimin and said, what do you know? This is just a basic product that I developed. A mere gun is nothing. In the future, I'll make a gun that's 100 times more powerful than this gun. That's a real divine weapon. It can take the enemy's head from 1,000 miles away without a sound. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone trembled. Killing people from 1,000 miles away? This was a goddamn heaven-defying divine weapon. If there was really such a thing, would the Tang dynasty be afraid of anything? They would be able to sweep through the Turks and Gogurians. In a moment, a terrifying plan began to brew in Yu Qigong and Li Shimin's minds. Feng Zi, when will you make that thing you mentioned? Li Shimin grabbed Zhang Feng, his eyes shining. Seeing Li Shimin's expression, Zhang Feng was instantly amused. He thought to himself, you old brat, didn't you say that my fellow is useless? The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, and he deliberately coughed twice, acting like an old man. Ahem, what's the hurry? You haven't even learned how to walk, and you already want to run. You guys should play with the gun first. How can we not be anxious? If there's that thing you mentioned, the soldiers at the front line will be confident of winning the battle. Also, you'll be able to get a lot of benefits. Yu Qigong hurriedly said. He really wanted this weapon. If it was given to the soldiers, who knew how many fewer people would die? All right, I got it. You should practice with this gun first. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said impatiently. In fact, he wasn't sure when he could make it. He was only in the preparation stage now. With that said, everyone returned to the front of the blunderbuss. Each of them picked up a blunderbuss and began to practice under Zhang Feng's guidance. Bang! Bang! After a series of gunshots, another flock of birds flew through the forest. After practicing for a while, it was already dusk. Everyone felt irritated and wanted to drag Zhang Feng down the mountain. After descending the mountain, the crowd did not linger and went their separate ways. The next morning, when the sky was still bright, the streets of Chang'an were already boiling. Peddlers from all over the country were peddling their wares on the streets. Peddlers and servants were also preparing to set up sheds on the ground, preparing for a day of work. Tong Huifang's basketball court was already filled with many youngsters who were showing off their skills. With the continuous cheers, the stadium was full of enthusiasm. Not long after, a few teenagers in gorgeous clothes walked down the field. Brothers, do you know about the Zhang residence's cotton-padded clothes? Of course I know. As soon as they sat down, they began to chat. They were all famous playboys in Chang'an, so they were more well-informed than ordinary people. I heard that the Zhang residence has already started selling it. Are you serious? Did President Zhang really manage to play with that piece of white paper? Of course. I heard that the sales are pretty good. It's quite warm to wear. Hearing this, everyone present was stunned. Everyone knew that Zhang Feng's piece of white paper was not very popular at first, but now it was really successful. President Zhang's products are probably not ordinary. I have to go back and ask my father to buy some. Otherwise, there won't be any left. A quick-witted dandy picked up his clothes and ran away. Another playboy's expression changed as if he had sensed something. He said as he ran, "Brothers, I have something to do at home. I'll leave first." Those who could survive in Chang'an were not fools. Looking at everyone's expressions, the other playboys immediately reacted and hurriedly found an excuse to go home. Coincidentally, this scene was heard by a peddler who was selling fermented rice. Startled, he hurriedly picked up the pole and walked back home. On the street, he bumped into a friend who was selling things together. "Juzi, why are you walking so fast?" "Wait, I have something to say to you." "What is it?" "Hurry up and say it. Don't delay Lao Tzu's business." "Do you remember what I told you about the Zhang Mansion's cotton-padded clothes?" "The Zhang Mansion has started selling cotton-padded clothes." "What? The Zhang Mansion has started selling cotton-padded clothes? I have to go and take a look." After that, the friend threw down his burden and ran home. Just like that, in a short while, one person spread to 10, and 10 spread to 100. The whole street of Chang'an began to crazily talk about the cotton-padded clothes. At first, everyone said that the cotton-padded clothes were invented by President Zhang to help people survive the winter. Later on, everyone said that the white paper in the cotton-padded clothes was a divine item from the heavens. Some even began to spread rumors that the white paper was a gift from the heavens, and then a divine person like President Zhang was sent to benefit the Tang dynasty. After that, the people of Chang'an quickly took action. They went home to take their money and prepared to go to the Zhang Mansion to buy the clothes. At the same time, in a rich family's home in Chang'an City, a thin and tall man sat in the main seat, holding a teacup and sipping tea. This man was a rich silk merchant in Chang'an City. His name was Zhao Xian, and he was shrewd and good at scheming. At this time, a figure stumbled into the hall. "Master," Zhao Xian was startled and took a closer look. It turned out to be a servant. He scolded angrily, "You dog, why are you running? Is there a dog chasing you?" Chapter 17:20. The servant gasped and swallowed his saliva before saying, "Master, Zhang Mansion's cotton-padded clothes are on sale. The news has spread all over Chang'an." "What?" Zhao Xian's expression changed slightly and he slowly put down the teacup in his hand. He had long heard that Zhang Feng made clothes with white folds. He had laughed at Zhang Feng before, but he didn't expect him to do it. It was really unexpected. After thinking for a while, he looked up at the servant and asked, "How are the cotton-padded clothes?" The servant hurriedly cupped his hands and said, "Zhang Mansion's cotton-padded clothes are selling very well. They will be out of stock soon. And countless people are flattering them, saying that they are a gift from God to benefit the Tang dynasty. Now many people are rushing to Zhang Mansion to buy them." Hearing this, Zhao Xian frowned more deeply. He clenched his right fist and began to pace in the hall, thinking to himself. As a businessman, it was his nature to not do anything without profit. Zhang Feng's cotton-padded clothes were now a hot topic. If it was really as good as the rumors said, he would undoubtedly make a profit by taking action in time. But everything was just a rumor. That would be a loss. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered the academy. Zhang Feng could build an academy, so he wouldn't do such a thing that would damage his reputation. Moreover, with his identity, if he really did such a thing, he wouldn't be able to establish himself in Chang'an. Zhao Xian suddenly turned around and waved his sleeves, saying directly, "Inform the accountant to withdraw half of the money." Ask the butler to take people to buy Zhang Feng's cotton-padded clothes as soon as possible. The servant nodded and ran out quickly. Zhao Xian withdrew his gaze and began to pace in the hall with his hands behind his back. He kept muttering, "Since I have decided to buy, I have to buy more. This money is not enough. I have to go out and borrow some money to buy all the cotton-padded clothes in Zhang Mansion." After that, Zhao Xian stepped out of the door. At this time, the gate of Zhang Mansion was crowded with people. It seemed that there was no end in sight. Those pushing empty carts and those with money all looked at Zhang Mansion. Why hasn't President Zhang's cotton-padded clothes started to be sold? That's right, I'm dying of anxiety. I brought 300 copper coins with me today. I'm going to sell a few pieces of clothing for my wife and children. I brought 500 coins. If you buy too much, you can resell it. Just as everyone was filled with anticipation, the door to Zhang Mansion opened and a person walked out. It was the housekeeper, Du Zidong. Du Zidong first cupped her hands towards the crowd, then said with a troubled expression, "Everyone, I'm sorry, but today's cotton-padded clothes are sold out. Please come back next time." As soon as his voice fell, it attracted a wave of resentment from the crowd. How did they sell so quickly? There's no place to spend the money I prepared? How preposterous. Everyone complained in dissatisfaction. After a while, seeing that there were still no cotton-padded clothes from Zhang Mansion, they left resentfully one after another. From time to time, all kinds of discussions could be heard from the huge crowd. A tall and thin man whispered, "Have you heard? Someone conveniently brought a few cotton-padded clothes from the Zhang Mansion." F***ck, how did you know? I have a relative who works in Zhang Mansion. He heard about it. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and find your relative and buy some cotton-padded clothes to wear. After saying that, the man was about to pull the tall and thin man away. No way, why should I take you there? I'll pay, right? After saying that, the man handed a string of coins to the tall and thin man. The tall and thin man took it, nodded with satisfaction, and quickened his pace with the man. The speaker didn't mean it, but the news spread. In an instant, the news spread to the ears of the rich families in Chang'an. They were all rubbing their fists and preparing to purchase this batch of exposed cotton-padded clothes. But how could it be so easy? The cotton-padded clothes had been bought out by Niu Weili, Zhang Shan, Qian Tong, and others. Everyone could only sigh at Zhang Mansion, but secretly hoped that the next cotton-padded clothes sale would come sooner. The golden crow fell in the west, and the jade rabbit rose in the east. At this time, Chang'an was already under curfew. There was almost no one on the street, only the night watchman beating the clapper. Bang, it's midnight, safe and sound. As the night watchman passed by, a group of soldiers in new combat uniforms strode onto the street. They were the patrolling soldiers of Chang'an City, patrolling at irregular times every night. It was just past midnight, so it was time for them to patrol. As they walked past, a small house suddenly lit up, and 3 or 5 figures could be seen in it. Inside the house, 5 people were sitting around a table. All of them were burly and had fierce eyes. The leader had a knife scar on his face, which made people feel very uncomfortable. These people were spies sent by the Turks to the Tang dynasty. They were responsible for spying and intelligence, and they rarely met if there was no important information. "Chief, I just heard that the dean of White Deer College in the Tang dynasty invented a kind of clothes. After wearing it, it's airtight and you won't feel the cold of winter." "What?" The face of the leader, Scarface, changed and he slapped the table. "Old 5, have you found out that the Tang dynasty really has such a good thing?" The man called Old 5 nodded, indicating that he was sure. Seeing this, Scarface's mouth showed a cruel smile. How can the people of the Tang dynasty deserve such a divine thing? This kind of thing should be owned by us noble Turks. Chapter 1721. As soon as he finished speaking, the crowd reacted violently. Chief is right. The Tang dynasty doesn't deserve to own such a divine object. Our people are still suffering from the cold. We should take the divine object away. The scar-faced man glanced at the crowd and nodded with satisfaction. This was the effect he wanted. He waved his hand to signal them to stop, and then a cold light flashed in his eyes. He said, "Lao Wu, take everyone to scout the place and find out the truth. We'll take action tomorrow night." "Yes, Chief." Lao Wu put his right hand on his chest and smiled viciously. Then, the scar-faced man blew out the candle, and the room fell into darkness again. At the same time, not far away in the Tubo embassy in the Tang dynasty. In a large room, a man in his early 30s was sitting in the main seat. His face was as yellow as wax, and he didn't look very good. He was Jinikuan, the envoy of Tubo in the Tang dynasty. Two young men were standing in the middle of the hall. They were thin and short, and their average height was less than 1.6 meters. They were Tubo spies who collected information in the Tang dynasty. Jinikuan glanced at them, changed his sitting position, and said slowly, "Wu Min, what important information do you have for me? Tell me." The man called Wu Min glanced at his companion, and then looked at Jinikuan and said slowly, "Your Excellency, we heard that the Tang dynasty has just invented a divine object." "Oh?" Jinikuan was a little surprised and asked directly, "What divine object?" "It's a kind of clothing. It's said that after wearing it, you can resist the cold and even become an immortal." "What?" Jinikuan directly slapped the table and stood up. He stared at Wu Min and said word by word, "Have you found out? You didn't miss anything? Where is the divine object now?" Hearing this, Wu Min lowered his head and glanced at his companion from the corner of his eyes, as if he was asking something. His companion immediately gave him a reassuring look. Only then did the shaman raise his head in a hurry and say, "Yes, sir. We've asked around. The divine object is in the hands of the Dean of White Deer College in the Tang dynasty, and it has been on sale since yesterday." With his hands behind his back, Jinikuan's face darkened. He began to pace on the high platform, muttering as he walked, "The Tang dynasty robbed so many of our livestock before. Why should our people suffer from hunger and cold while they enjoy themselves here? How preposterous." With that, he glanced at the two of them and said in a deep voice, "Continue to keep an eye on White Deer College. If there's any news, let me know immediately." The two of them looked at each other, nodded, and walked out the door. Not far from the Tubo embassy, the Tuyuhan embassy was also getting restless. In a dark room, there was a square table in the middle. An oil lamp on the table illuminated the faces of the three people sitting around it. The leader was an older middle-aged man. His head was wrapped in a square scarf and he had a mustache. He was Wu Kaishao, the Tuyuhan ambassador to the Tang dynasty. On his left was a skinny young man in green. The other one was in red. He also looked like he hadn't eaten for a few days. "Sir, we've confirmed that the cotton clothes invented by the Tang dynasty can resist the cold. It's a divine object for us Tuyuhan." "What?" Wu Kaishao slapped the table and stared at the person who spoke. "Is this true?" The young man in green nodded. The young man in green nodded and said seriously, "Yes, sir. The clothes have already been on sale. In less than half a day, they were all sold out by the rich merchants in Chang'an. I heard that a few of them are still out there, but they haven't been found yet." Wu Kaishao stood up slowly and walked to the window. He looked at the scenery outside as if he was thinking about something. After a while, he turned around and said, "Continue to ask around. It's best if you can get a set of clothes." Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other and said in unison, "Yes." Then they stood up and walked out the door. Only Wu Kaishao was left in the room, thinking about something. On the main street of Chang'an, a few sneaky figures were floating around. They were masked and dressed in black. They quickly disappeared into the night. Just as they walked past, a group of soldiers in new combat uniforms heard them and quietly walked behind them with Mitsubishi bayonets in their hands. The sudden slash of the axe made them shudder violently. Without waiting for them to speak, the soldiers carried them to a house not far away. Inside the house, there were 2 rows of soldiers standing in neat rows. There were a few dead bodies in black on the ground. Sitting next to the dead bodies was a person. It was Yuchi Gong. He was playing with a Mitsubishi bayonet in his hand. At this moment, footsteps came from outside the door. Hearing this, Yuchi Gong looked at the door and saw a few soldiers in new combat uniforms escorting a few men in black. It was the same people from before. "Sir Yuchi, we've captured a few more men in black." Yuchi Gong stopped playing and stabbed the Mitsubishi bayonet into the table. He said in a deep voice, "Come forward." The soldiers dragged the man in black in front of Yuchi Gong and pulled down the mask on his face. Yuchi Gong looked at them and narrowed his eyes. He said sternly, "Who are you? Who sent you?" Chapter 17:22. The men in black glanced at Yuchi Gong coldly, then turned their heads to the side and remained silent. "Looks like you're all stubborn." Yuchi Gong sneered. "I love stubborn people. Since you don't want to talk, then die." Then, Yuchi Gong looked at the soldier beside him and gave him a look. The soldier understood and dragged the men to the side of the corpses. He took out the long sword at his waist and finished them off with one slash. Seeing this, Yuchi Gong took out a cigarette from his waist and flicked it over the oil lamp on the table. He put it in his mouth and took a deep puff. He exhaled the smoke and muttered to himself, "This is the 5th batch tonight. Chang'an is going to be chaotic." Then, Yuchi Gong glanced at the men in black squatting in the corner and frowned. These people were just caught, but they were from Junla, Tubo, and Tuyuhun. The Tang dynasty was on good terms with these countries, so he couldn't just kill them. But after interrogating them for a long time, there was no result. Should he kill them or let them go? Yuchi Gong was stumped. He glanced at the men in black, then looked at the soldier beside him and said, "Lock them up. Don't let any of them escape." Then, he turned and walked out of the house. The next day, early morning. As the morning bell rang, the morning court officially began. At this time, the hall was filled with officials holding white jade tablets. They all looked solemn and serious. Li Shimin sat on the dragon throne and looked down at everyone. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The officials bowed. "Everyone, please rise." Li Shimin waved his hand and gestured for everyone to rise. After getting up, Yuchi Gong stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, last night, a large number of Tubo, Tuyuhun, Indian, Turkic, and even Goguryeo spies appeared in Chang'an. They seemed to be after that cotton coat." "What?" Li Shimin's eyes flashed with disbelief. He knew that once the cotton coat was revealed, the foreign ambassadors in Tang would definitely take action. But he didn't expect to catch so many in one night. From this, it could be seen how tempting this thing was to them. These places, especially Goguryeo, the Turks, Tubo, and Tuyuhun, did not have a good winter. Almost every year, it was up to the heavens to see if they could survive. But now it was different. Foam Z had created such a thing. Once this thing flowed into these places, what would the consequences be? Li Shimin knew this better than anyone else. It was almost as if the cold no longer affected or weakened them. This was not a good thing for the Tang dynasty. However, the most troublesome thing right now was Tubo and Tuyuhun. Although there were plans to target them, these plans were still in progress. Furthermore, whether or not he should give it to her was a difficult question. Li Shimin knew that the reason these envoys did not come to court today was probably because they were considering the matter of the missing people last night. Once they recovered, then tomorrow's morning court session, Li Shimin's expression could not help but change. But he still flicked his sleeves and said calmly, "Minister Yuchi, what do you think about this?" At this moment, the officials in the court were in an uproar. Previously, they had thought that this was rather baffling. After all, the Tang envoys were always very low-key in Chang'an. How could such a thing happen? But what did His Majesty mean? The Emperor meant, could it be that all of this was real? For a moment, the court was in an uproar. What? The Turk spies? Why did these spies come to the Tang dynasty? Could it be that these guys have some bad intentions? On the dragon throne, Li Shimin frowned and glanced at the crowd. Seeing this, little Gizi hurriedly shouted in a sharp voice, "Stop arguing." Hearing little Gizi's words, everyone quickly stopped talking and stood respectfully in place. Seeing this, Li Shimin shifted his gaze to Yuchi Gong and said slowly, "Yuchi Gong, tell me in detail what happened last night." "Yes, Your Majesty." Yuchi Gong regained his composure and said, "Last night, when I was patrolling Chang'an, I discovered quite a number of men in black. Later, I sent guards to apprehend them, but they were discovered to be Turkic spies. After interrogating them, they refused to say anything and were killed by me. However, later on, I discovered quite a number of spies from Jinla, India, Tubo, and Tuyuhun. Among them, there were even some Woku spies who wanted to break into Zhang Mansion at night. I didn't dare to make a decision." Hearing this, Li Shimin frowned. The Turks and Indians were easy to understand. They were just spies for some information. Just kill them. But why would these Woku pirates break into the Zhang residence at night? Could it be related to the recent cotton clothes? I need to interrogate them more. And Jinla, Tubo, and Tuyuhun. The Tang dynasty has always been on good terms with them. What are they thinking now that they sent spies? If I kill these people, it will inevitably cause conflict between the two countries and may cause some unnecessary trouble. But if I don't kill them, I can't show the imperial power of the Tang dynasty. This is a bit difficult. Chapter 1723. He glanced at the crowd and said slowly, "Dear ministers, what do you think we should do with these spies?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone frowned. They looked at each other and pretended to be mute. Wei Zheng, who was standing at the front, turned his head and glanced at the crowd with disdain in his heart. He thought to himself, "You guys are usually the ones who quarrel the most. Why aren't you talking now? Why are you all pretending to be mute?" After a cold snort, Wei Zheng took a step forward with the white jade tablet in his hand. "Your Majesty, I suggest that we release all these spies." Li Shimin looked at Wei Zheng in surprise. "Dear Minister, why do you suggest that we release these spies?" "Yes, why do you want to release these spies, Lord Wei? Don't you know what kind of harm it will cause to the Tang dynasty if we release these spies?" Everyone looked at Wei Zheng with a puzzled expression. "Let's not talk about what kind of loss it will cause to the Tang dynasty. Even if we kill them, there will be spies who will continue to sneak into the Tang dynasty. There are thousands of spies. Can you kill them all? If we release these spies, it will be different." Wei Zheng smiled faintly and said slowly. A grand scribe walked out and asked curiously, "What's the difference?" Wei Zheng glanced at the grand scribe and said, "If we release these spies, we can numb these countries and make them relax their vigilance. It will be more convenient for the Tang dynasty to do things." "How can we do that?" "If we release these spies, they will think that the Tang dynasty is afraid of them." The grand scribe waved his sleeve and was very dissatisfied. Then, he looked at Li Shimin and said, "Your Majesty, please give the order. I am willing to lead the army to immediately attack Tubo, Jinla, and other countries. I only need 200,000 soldiers." As soon as he finished speaking, a row of generals stood up as if they had been injected with chicken blood. "Your Majesty, I only need 150,000 soldiers to immediately attack Tuyuhun and show the imperial power of the Tang dynasty. Your Majesty, I only need 100,000 soldiers to attack the Woku pirates." Everyone presented their memorials one after another, expressing their determination to establish their careers. "Nonsense." Zhang Sun Wuji immediately stood up and scolded, "The Battle of Chiotzi is getting more and more intense. How can we attack other countries? Moreover, Lord Wei is right. Releasing these spies is undoubtedly the best choice for the Tang dynasty." Zhang Sun Wuji ignored the grand scribe and turned to Li Shimin. He cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, this subject suggests that we release these spies." As soon as he finished speaking, the other civil officials exchanged glances with one another before stepping forward one after another. "Your subjects agree." "This subject agrees." Seeing this, Li Shimin narrowed his eyes. He didn't say anything, but his mind was racing. According to Wei Zheng, releasing the spies and continuing to maintain a good relationship with Xinla, Tubo, and Tuyuhan would also numb the enemy and make them think that the Tang dynasty was afraid of them. At most, they would lose some face. In this way, it would be more beneficial for the future development of the Tang dynasty. However, if they started a war with these countries, the Battle of Chiotsi would definitely be affected. Once they became angry and joined forces with the Turks, India, and other countries, the Tang dynasty would definitely not be able to stop them. At that time, it wouldn't be a matter of a few spies, but a matter of several countries. Forget it, it's better to release these spies. After making up his mind, Li Shimin glanced at the crowd and said in a deep voice, I have decided to release the spies. As soon as he finished speaking, the faces of the generals changed. They hurriedly cupped their hands and said, Your Majesty, you can't. If you let these people go, what will happen to the imperial prestige of the Tang dynasty? Yes, Your Majesty, you can't let these people go. Li Shimin narrowed his eyes and waved his sleeves. I have already decided on this matter. There is no need to discuss it further. Yuqi Gong, release these spies immediately after the court is dismissed. After that, Li Shimin walked out of the side hall without looking back. Imperial Study. Li Shimin sat on the dragon throne with a lit cigarette in his hand. He took a deep puff and exhaled smoke, looking like he was enjoying it. After a while, a few heads popped out of the door. Li Shimin took a closer look and found that it was Yuqi Gong and the others who were in the court just now. Come in. Li Shimin took the cigarette and said lightly. Hearing this, Yuqi Gong, Qing Yao Jin, Wei Zheng, Zhang Sun Wuji, and the others walked into the imperial study together. Your Majesty. Everyone bowed. Li Shimin exhaled a mouthful of smoke and said slowly, No need to be so courteous in the study. Let's talk about what happened in the court just now. Although he agreed to release the spies just now, he still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. After all, these guys all had ulterior motives. He still needed to be on guard. Wei Zheng stepped forward and said, Your Majesty, releasing the spies is not a big deal. This is also a step to ease the Tang dynasty's Chiotsi war. But, I'm afraid, Wei Zheng frowned at this point. Old Wei, what are you afraid of? Hurry up and say it. You're stuck at the crucial moment. Qing Yao Jin said unhappily. Wei Zheng glanced at Qing Yao Jin. Seeing that Li Shimin was also a little impatient, he said, Your Majesty, do you remember when the Tang dynasty borrowed food from Tubo and Tuyuhan? Hearing this, Li Shimin was stunned. He clearly remembered that when Tubo and the Tatangu locust calamity had caused a huge uproar, that brat Zhang Feng had schemed against them. That was how the matter of borrowing food came about. One had to know that Tubo and Tuyuhan were poor and remote places. Their families did not have enough food to eat. Chapter 1724. Thus, they half sold and half gave the pigs to the great Tang. At that time, in the eyes of the Tubo and Tuyuhan, these were filthy animals. They couldn't even fill their stomachs, so how could they feed the pigs? Of course, the people of Chang and city also thought the same. They all thought that Zhang Feng and himself were crazy to want such things. However, they didn't expect that Zhang Feng's behavior would shock everyone. He used inferior pork to make braised meat and began to sell it in Chang and city. At first, people couldn't accept this thing. Later, people gradually tried it until they were fascinated. Thinking of this, Li Shimin felt a burst of satisfaction. After all, this matter made him proud. He smiled and said, Of course, I remember. What's wrong? My dear minister. Wei Zheng sighed secretly and said, Your Majesty, have you ever thought about what if Tubo and Tuyuhan ask us for food this time? Hearing this, Li Shimin frowned. He really didn't think about this problem because Tubo and Tuyuhan didn't mention this matter at all. It was as if this incident had never happened. Everyone had forgotten about it. Now that Wei Zheng mentioned it, he slowly recalled. Have you thought of a way? Li Shimin asked. As soon as his voice fell, Qing Yao Jin jumped out. What way? We've already borrowed it. Your Majesty, let's be straightforward and not return it. Yes, those two guys won't dare to come to the Tang dynasty. To the side, Yuqi respectfully agreed. Wei Jing denied, no, this matter must be dealt with. Otherwise, it will affect the relationship between the Tang dynasty and the two countries. Li Shimin frowned. If it were other countries, they wouldn't return it. However, Tubo and Tuyuhan had always been friendly with the Tang dynasty. Moreover, the people of the two countries were still in a state of food shortage. The people did not have enough to eat, and there were internal riots. The Tang dynasty had just sent 100,000 soldiers to help them stabilize the situation. If things turned sour at this time, what would happen to the soldiers of the Tang dynasty? What if the other side flew into a rage out of humiliation and joined the Battle of Chutsi? Then what do you think we should do? Li Shimin took a puff of his cigarette and said slowly. Wei Jing said with an embarrassed expression, Your Majesty, the Tang dynasty doesn't have much food in reserve. It's not enough to repay the debt. In fact, he didn't have a solution in mind. He just brought it up for everyone to discuss. Damn, since you don't have anything to return, why did you keep talking? If you want me to say it, what's there to return? I borrowed it with my own ability, why should I return it? Qing Yao Jin said in a sarcastic tone. That's right. Those two old fellows can't even take care of themselves right now. How would they have the time to ask for food from us? I think you guys are worrying too much. Yu Qigong also laughed it off. In fact, Li Shimin had thought of not returning the debt. However, because of the Battle of Chiotzi, he couldn't do that. After all, he was the emperor and had to think of the entire Tang dynasty. At this time, Zhang Sun Wuji, who had been silent all this time, stood up and smiled faintly. Your Majesty, this matter was planned by Zhang Feng. It's reasonable to say that he should solve it. Hearing this, Li Shimin slapped his thigh and said in realization, yes, it was that boy's idea. He should solve it. Everyone nodded secretly as if to say that it was all this boy's fault. Let's go and find that boy. Li Shimin stood up and walked directly to the door, followed by everyone. Zhang Mansion. Zhang Feng was supervising the servants and maids to make cotton-padded clothes. Yesterday's cotton-padded clothes were sold out as soon as they went on the market. He had to hurry up and make some today, or they would be out of stock. Under his tireless guidance, a rough roar came from outside the door. Fengzi, are you home? Zhang Feng pricked up his ears. Yes, it must be old Sheng and old Yu again. These two voices could be heard 2 alleys away. He didn't need to look to know who they were. Zhang Feng walked to the door and saw Lao Li and the others. He smiled faintly and said, I'm home. Come in. Okay, we thought you weren't here. Qing Yaojin stepped forward and put his arm around Zhang Feng's shoulder and said with a smile. Yu Qigong also laughed at the side. Only Li Shimin and Wei Zheng had sullen faces, as if someone owed them money. Seeing this, Zhang Feng said with a smile, what's wrong? Lao Li, old Wei, who owes you money? It's all your fault. Li Shimin rolled his eyes at Zhang Feng. After saying that, he walked toward the study of the Zhang residence. Wei Zheng sighed inwardly, glanced at Zhang Feng, and followed Li Shimin. Zhang Feng was confused for a moment. He pointed at Li Shimin's back and said to Qing Yaojin, what's wrong with Lao Li? What trouble did I cause? Don't pay attention to him. Let's go to the study and get some good wine for me and old He. Qing Yaojin waved his hand and pulled Zhang Feng into the study. Yes, don't pay attention to him. Bring out your good wine. Yu Qigong also laughed at the side. Zhang Feng scratched his head and didn't think too much. He said to Du Zidong, who was working in the courtyard, Old Du, bring 2 jars of good wine to the study and make a few dishes. Du Zidong understood and quickly went to prepare. After saying that, the 3 of them walked to the study with their arms around each other's shoulders. Chapter 1725. In the study, Li Shimin was sitting on a chair with a cigarette in his hand. His face was full of worry. Wei Zheng, Zhang Sun Wuji, and the others were also unhappy. Seeing this, Zhang Feng went up and asked, "What's wrong with you guys today? Why are you all the same?" Wei Zheng tilted his head and looked at Li Shimin. Seeing that the latter was unwilling to speak, he sighed. He looked at Zhang Feng and said, "Fengzi, do you remember the last time when Tubo and Tuyuhan borrowed food?" "Of course I remember." Zhang Feng took out a cigarette from his waist and walked to the light. He took a deep breath and said, "What happened?" He could be said to be the leader of this matter. Braised meat was popular at that time. How could he not remember? "It's good that you remember." Wei Jing nodded and continued, "I heard from Lord Zhangsun that last night, many spies from Tujue, Tubo, Tuyuhan, Jinla, and other places were caught in Chang'an. They seemed to want your cotton-padded clothes." "Want my cotton-padded clothes?" Zhang Feng glanced at Wei Zheng as if he had expected this. "This is normal. I just didn't expect them to come so quickly." The cotton-padded clothes were a unique thing. To Tujue, Tubo, Tuyuhan, and other places, it was a divine item. Moreover, when the cotton-padded clothes were sold, it had already caused a stir in Chang'an. Tujue, Tubo, Tuyuhan, and other places were like hungry wolves that smelled meat. How could they let it go? Naturally, they would pounce on it. Therefore, this was not difficult to understand. It was just that he did not expect the other party to come so quickly. The cotton-padded clothes had just been sold and the other party had already known about it. From this point of view, there were many spies from Tujue, Tubo, Tuyuhan, and other countries lurking in Chang'an, and their strength was not low. Regarding Zhang Feng's prediction, everyone just looked at him in surprise and did not say anything. After all, they also knew how terrifying the benefits of the cotton-padded clothes were. It would be abnormal if they didn't have any ideas about it. Wei Jing nodded and said, "The spies were caught." During the morning court session today, the emperor considered the relationship with Tubo and Tuyuhan and released the spies. However, he was worried that they would ask for the grain from last time. At this time, Li Shimin, who had been silent all this time, interrupted, "That's right, Feng Zi. Last time, it was your idea to borrow food. You have to find a way to make up for this." Hearing this, Zhang Feng glanced at everyone and said with a smile, "I thought it was something big. Just this? Is it worth making you all cry?" Fang Xianling couldn't take it anymore. He said angrily, "Don't talk big, kid. What ideas do you have?" "That's right." Even the core ministers of the imperial court had no way to deal with it. What idea did this brat have? Everyone looked at Zhang Feng curiously. Zhang Feng looked at everyone and said with a proud smile, "Don't Tubo and Tuyuhan want the cotton-padded clothes? As long as we use the cotton-padded clothes to shut their mouths, they won't come to the Tang dynasty to ask for grain." As soon as he finished speaking, Li Shimin said with a hint of anger, "Don't you know what cotton-padded clothes mean to Tubo and Tuyuhan? If the cotton-padded clothes were given to these countries, they would not be threatened by the cold, and their national strength would be greatly increased. This was not a good thing for the Tang dynasty." Qing Yaojin picked up a bowl of wine, swallowed a mouthful, and said with a smile, "Maybe this brat is holding back some evil ideas." Yu Qigong poured himself a bowl of wine and echoed, "That's right. Would he let himself be taken advantage of?" Zhang Feng glanced at everyone and smiled faintly, "Let me ask you first. How much is Tubo and Tuyuhan producing now?" Wei Jing frowned slightly, thought for a moment, and said, "About 10,000 stones a year." Li Shimin nodded. In fact, he didn't know about this. Zhang Feng took a puff of his cigarette and said slowly, "The people in Tubo like silk. Since that's the case, we'll cater to their preferences. We'll use silk made from silk and mulberry silk to exchange for the right to sell cotton-padded clothes. In other words, we'll sell them the right to sell the cotton-padded clothes. If it doesn't work, we can also get some leather products. They're cold all year round, so we can shut the mouths of those Tubo people." Li Shimin frowned as soon as he finished speaking. Exchanging cotton-padded clothes and mulberry silk for the right to sell cotton-padded clothes would make these two countries dependent on the Tang dynasty in the long run. After all, they were cold all year round. Once the cotton-padded clothes were shipped there, they couldn't leave. However, the other party was not a fool. Would they agree? Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng and asked, will they agree with what you said? And it's a little too obvious? After all, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this was squeezing the savings of the two countries. The other party might not agree. The current situation doesn't allow them to disagree. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said directly, we have the initiative now, so we have to be straightforward. Moreover, there's no need to say more about the use of cotton-padded clothes. They will naturally understand. After all, there's a lot of profit in this matter. If they take it, not only can they shut the mouths of those starving people, but they can also stabilize the hearts of their people and stabilize their situation. This will only be beneficial for the Battle of Chiotsi. Because if things go wrong, this battle is likely to lead to an all-out war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks. Chapter 1726. Speaking of this, Zhang Feng seemed to have thought of something. The war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks. Wasn't it the second year of Zhengguan that was recorded in history? And now, it was the winter of the second year of Zhengguan. Wasn't that the Turks were coming soon? Thinking of this, he frowned. The attack of the Turks was recorded in real records. It was definitely not groundless. Now, they were facing the attack of the Turks, and there were less than a few months left. It seemed that he had to prepare something. Li Shimin saw Zhang Feng's expression and thought that it was not feasible, so he quickly asked, what's wrong? Fengzi, is it not possible? Zhang Feng shook his head, and a trace of worry flashed in his eyes. It's not about the Tubo and Tuyuhun, but I thought of something else. What is it? How could she make a reckless brat like you so worried? Qing Yaojin laughed at the side. He was right. Zhang Feng had always acted like a cynical boy, and there were not many things that could make him worry. Qing Yaojin's words aroused everyone's curiosity. Looking at everyone's puzzled faces, Zhang Feng sighed and said slowly, this winter, the Turks will come to the Tang dynasty to kidnap. Before he finished speaking, Li Shimin's body suddenly shook, and the cigarette in his hand fell to the ground. He looked at Zhang Feng in horror. Fengzi, is what you said true? Yes, Fengzi, this matter can't be joked about. Fengzi, how did you know? Everyone's eyes widened, and they looked at Zhang Feng in surprise. Now, the Tang dynasty and the Turks were at war, and both sides were on high alert. How could they come to the Tang dynasty to kidnap? In other words, the Turks no longer had any other forces to come to the Tang dynasty, so there was no reason for them to plunder the Tang dynasty. Zhang Feng glanced at the crowd, paused, and then said, I heard my master mention this by chance. He said that there will be a huge snowstorm in the Turks this winter. Due to years of war, frost, drought, and other natural disasters, countless cattle and sheep will be frozen to death. Even people will not be spared. This is the main reason why the Turks came to the Tang dynasty to plunder. What? Li Shimin exclaimed, the Turks can freeze cattle, sheep, and people to death? He had heard of his master, Zhang Feng, more than once. He could be said to be a prophet. Previously, he had predicted a plague of locusts, and in the end, a plague of locusts had really appeared. He didn't have the slightest doubt that there would be a blizzard in the Turkic Khaganate. Originally, he had been worrying about the war in Chiotsi and not having a chance to attack the Turks. This was simply a heaven-sent opportunity. As long as he suddenly launched a surprise attack on the Turks, he would definitely be able to win by surprise. Li Shimin quickly asked, Fengzi, did your master say anything else? For example, if we take this opportunity to attack the Turks, will we be able to win? Qing Yaojin and Yuchi Gong at the side heard this and instantly became spirited. They also knew that Zhang Feng was talking about his master, so they naturally believed him without a doubt. Moreover, they were all generals who had obtained their current noble titles by virtue of their military achievements. Although their current noble titles were already the highest, their soldiers, children, and grandchildren had yet to achieve any military achievements. They must not let go of this opportunity. Once they succeeded in taking down the Turks, their subordinates, children, and grandchildren would be safe for several generations. Zhang Feng glanced at the fervent gazes of the crowd and sighed. This won't do. Even though the Turkic Khaganate will lose their livestock in this blizzard, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. How can we take them down so easily? Moreover, the Tang dynasty still doesn't know much about the environment in the Turks' territory. Once they enter, they will be trapped. If they counterattack at the last moment, the gains won't make up for the losses for the Tang dynasty's soldiers. This won't do, that won't do either. You're really making me anxious. Qing Yaojin rolled his eyes at Zhang Feng, picked up the wine bowl on the table, and drank it in one gulp. Yu Qigong at the side couldn't sit still anymore. He glared at Zhang Feng. Then, Fengzi, what do you think the Tang dynasty should do? Are we just going to wait for the Turks to come and rob us? That's right. Since we can't attack by force, we can't just wait for the Turks to come and rob us, right? One must know that those fellows eat people without spitting out the bones. Don't expect them to treat the people on the Tang dynasty's border kindly. Li Shimin waved his hand, indicating Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong to stop quarreling. Seeing this, the two resentfully glared at Zhang Feng. Each of them held a wine jar and didn't say anything. Fengzi, although their words aren't pleasant to hear, they make some sense. The Turks are in great trouble now. This is a good opportunity for the Tang dynasty to take them down. How can we let it go so easily? Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng and said seriously. He himself very much wanted to take down the Turks. Since the Wei River alliance, this matter could be said to be the biggest knot in his heart, and also a shame. At that time, the two fellows of the Eastern Turks, Xieli and Tuli, didn't abide by the treaty and suddenly sent troops. The main force entered the Wei River and went straight to Chang'an city. At that time, Chang'an's military strength was empty, and everyone was in danger. He had no choice but to sign another treaty with Xieli and Tuli on the Wei River bridge. Although the danger of Chang'an was temporarily alleviated, this matter also became a thorn in his heart that couldn't be removed for a long time. Now that there was such an opportunity, how could he let it go? Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin deeply. He knew what the other party was thinking. Didn't he want to take this opportunity to destroy the Turks?